Number 1. The certainty addiction. Listen closely. There's a taste you keep chasing that never satisfies. It's sweeter than power and cleaner than forgiveness. It promises silence. No more doubt, no more risk, no more what if. It's called certainty, and it is the most elegant prison ever designed. You tell yourself you're just being responsible. You're not delaying, you're refining. You're not afraid, you're thorough. You say, when I'm sure, I'll act. But sure keeps stepping 1 inch ahead of you, like a shadow you can't pin with a nail. So you build a brighter lamp, then another. Soon the room is blinding and you still can't see. The addiction begins innocently. A question gnaws at you, and you go hunting for the perfect explanation, the one that will tile over every gap, the one that will stop the ceiling from dripping unknowns onto your forehead at 3 a.m. You read and watch and ask and bookmark. You become a librarian of answers. Your shelves sag, your life doesn't move. Because certainty doesn't just clarify a choice, it delays it. You tell yourself you're only postponing until you know, but the deadline of your life is unlisted. You construct an altar to the final answer and you sacrifice momentum on it daily. You call it prudence. It's paralysis with good PR. You make an enemy out of ambiguity, but ambiguity is the price of being awake. You can sedate it with theories, but nothing sobers faster than reality. You want a map with every pebble drawn, every contour measured, every weather front predicted forever. That doesn't exist. Even if it did, you wouldn't walk, because maps are safe and walking is not. So you bargain. I won't act until I find the unassailable argument. That argument is a myth. Worse, when someone hands you something close, you push it away, because if you reached certainty, you would run out of reasons not to risk yourself. The addiction protects itself by never letting you finish. Notice the behaviors. You keep changing frameworks the moment they require commitment. You fall in love with skepticism because skepticism never marries anything. You fetishize definitions. If only we define truth, free will, good, self, then the fog will part. It doesn't. You win arguments and lose an entire year inside them. In the mirror of philosophy, you search for an angle that erases the need to choose. Rationalism, empiricism, pragmatism, each one in your hands becomes a shield. You aren't thinking, you're fortifying. You refuse to stand anywhere because standing is refutable. Floating, you believe, is invincible. Here's the nightmare. The more certain you demand to be, the more you must simplify the world to get it. You sand off inconvenient facts, ignore dissonant data, curate your feeds into a sterile museum of your own conclusions. Certainty shrinks the room until you can finally touch all 4 walls. Then you call it coherence. You forget what doubt is for. Doubt is a tool, not a home. It loosens stuck ideas so you can move them. It tests, probes, warns. But prolonged doubt rots into dread, an abstract terror that if you act, you'll be wrong, and if you're wrong, you'll be unworthy. So you cloak your fear as intellectual integrity, and congratulate yourself for standing still with sophistication. Watch how the addiction colonizes morality. You refuse to do the good in front of you because you haven't solved goodness itself. People become thought experiments with legs. Suffering becomes a datum. You wait for the complete theory of justice before you step between a boot and a neck. Meanwhile, the world times you out, and then there is love. You back away from choices that could hurt, insisting you need one more signal, one more argument that this person, this path, this vow is rational. You keep waiting for a guarantee that doesn't exist, a future that has already agreed to be kind. Your heart atrophies into a risk model. But the world doesn't grant guarantees, it offers gradients. Not black and white, but likelihoods. Not proof, but weight. You can stand on a probability and still be a person of principle. You don't have to carve the universe into marble to plant a tree. You might ask, isn't philosophy supposed to rescue me from uncertainty? That's the trick. Philosophy can clean your lens. It can't fix the weather. No argument outruns the basic fact that you act under conditions of incomplete information. Every choice is a bet. Every I will is a wager placed against the future. The addiction knows this, so it invents loopholes. It tells you to demand a standard no finite life can meet. Absolute certainty, universal consensus, zero risk of regret. Since none of those are achievable, you get to stay safely brilliant and permanently untested. It's a clever way to die without technically failing. You tell yourself you're being careful, but you are actually being devoured. Because certainty is not just a mental state, it's a moral temptation. The moment you claim it absolutely, you turn fallibility from a human condition into a personal insult. People who disagree must be blind or bad. You become rigid. Rigid minds snap. Collect enough certainty and you'll begin to police other people's doubt. It's contagious, after all. To keep your cathedral intact, you must drive out anything messy, unfinished, or questioning. You call it guarding the truth. It's fear in a uniform. There is another cost: creativity. Certainty hates play. It prefers answers to questions, solutions to experiments, closure to curiosity. You don't explore, you confirm, you don't wander, you justify. The unknown becomes a defect instead of a frontier. Soon your ideas are replicas of the first idea that ever felt safe. You'll try to detox with more information. That's another trap. You confuse knowing more with being less uncertain. Often the opposite happens. The territory expands. The variables multiply. The signal complicates. Knowledge humbles, if it's knowledge. The addiction wants a different feeling: control. Consider what you refuse when you refuse uncertainty. You refuse surprise, which is where joy hides. You refuse growth, which is what error teaches. You refuse responsibility, which only exists where outcomes aren't scripted. You say you want truth, but what you want is invulnerability. Here's the pivot you avoid. Choosing without certainty is not recklessness, it's adulthood. The child demands assurances before stepping into the pool. The adult steps because swimming is learned midwater. You want guarantees because you don't want to grieve. You will grieve anyway. So what does escape look like? Not anti-intellectualism, not just vibes. It looks like disciplined humility, acting on the best model you have, updating when reality argues back, and refusing to outsource your courage to the next book. It looks like placing reversible bets quickly and irreversible bets carefully, but placing them. It looks like speaking in probabilities. I'm 70% confident this is right, and moving. It looks like specifying what evidence would change your mind before you're emotionally married to your position. It looks like keeping a journal, not of conclusions, but of forecasts, so you can track whether your scene gets sharper or just louder. It looks like making friends with error, not worshiping it, not seeking it, but expecting it as the tuition for a life that's lived rather than validated. The addiction tells you error is a stain on identity. The truth is that error is simply a data point in motion. It looks like concrete commitments. You say yes to a project because it matters, not because your spreadsheet of outcomes predicts a painless victory. You say yes to a person because honoring them is worth the risk of being hurt. You say yes to a principle because even if the world mocks it, you won't. It looks like time boxing your search for reasons. I will research for 2 weeks, then decide. Ritualize the boundary. Certainty will beg you to extend the deadline by a day, an hour, a sip. Don't. Precision is a virtue until it becomes a moat around your life. It looks like asking better questions. Not, can I be absolutely sure, but is this good enough to own? Not, will this never hurt, but is this worth hurting for? Not, is this perfect, but is this honest, and can I improve it once it's real? You might protest, but what if I'm wrong? You will be. About many things. That doesn't make you a liar, it makes you breathing. The aim is not to never be wrong, it's to be wrong at stakes you can afford, in directions that teach you about matters that refine your character rather than calcify your pride. And yet a warning, once you loosen the grip of certainty, you will feel fear. The room will widen, the echo will stop flattering you. That is the sound of living space. It contains danger and also music. You cannot get one without the other. One more truth the addiction hides. Certainty is boring. It closes the book. It forbids the twist. It denies redemption because redemption requires a risk that might not work. Your story becomes an outline with no ink. You have arguments instead of episodes, a thesis instead of a journey. If you insist on certainty, you will haunt your own life like a careful ghost, condemned to watch other people, foolish, brave, erring, write themselves into the world. You will console yourself with cleverness. You will ache at night. You will swear you were right. You will never know what else was possible. So take a smaller oath. Not I will be certain, but I will be responsible for my uncertainty. I will choose and revise and endure the part of me that wants to hide behind explanations. I will measure twice and still cut. I will listen, and when I'm corrected, I will say thank you, like someone who intends to continue. The addiction will whisper as you move. Wait, one more argument, one more source, one more model. Smile at it like an old habit that once kept you safe. Then do the next human thing. Act, and let the world answer back. Here is a prayer you can actually use. May my need to be right be smaller than my need to be true. May my fear of error be smaller than my love of what could be built. May I stand on the uncertain ground and call it what it is, ground, and then walk. Because this is the paradox the addiction refuses. You cannot reach the island of certainty by staying in the boat. You must touch the water. It will be cold, you will gasp, and then for the first time in years, you will feel your muscles waking. Number 2, the skeptic's spiral. There's a question that sounds like intelligence and feels like safety. How do you know? You sharpen it, you polish it, you make it your signature move, you wield it on beliefs, on plans, on people who smile too easily at their own convictions. You wield it on yourself. And then, one night, you realize the question doesn't end. It just keeps eating. Doubt becomes not a doorway, but a drain. At first, it's noble. You refuse to be fooled. You won't be the mark at the carnival of certainty, buying miracle tonics from anyone with a confident voice. You learn fallacies, you memorize experiments gone wrong, you quote philosophers who cautioned against dogma. You discover that the map is not the territory, and then you start suspecting the territory too. Skepticism is a scalpel, but in your hands it turns into a solvent. It dissolves error, then structures, then commitments, then the courage to try anything that might expose you to being wrong in public. You begin to live in provisional mode, like a software release that never exits beta. Pending review, you tell yourself. Subject to revision, you say, as the seasons revise around you. Listen closely to the spiral. It starts with the basic move. For any claim, you demand a justification. When you're given one, you demand a justification for the justification. When you're given that, you demand a justification for the standards by which justifications count. Regress opens its jaws. You step in willingly, proud of the darkness because at least it isn't a lie. You think doubt keeps you honest. Sometimes it keeps you hollow. You apply the spiral to action. Should I write? Publish? Leave? You want reasons. Good. But you also want reasons for your reasons, and you want them so watertight that no future regret could crawl through. You demand guarantees from a world that only offers gradients. You confuse caution with virtue, and you slowly train your will to sit and heal. Notice the symptoms. You mock enthusiasm because it looks like gullibility in makeup. You distrust conviction not because it's false, but because it has the audacity to stand. You collect perspectives the way some people collect knives. Displayed, polished, never used. You have an exquisite vocabulary for why things might fail and a malnourished language for how to begin anyway. Skepticism, when it curdles, becomes a posture rather than a practice. The practice tests claims against evidence, predicts, checks, updates. The posture hovers above the battlefield and sneers. The practice risks being surprised. The posture makes surprise impossible by refusing to step inside the experiment at all. You were promised that doubt would protect you from error. Instead, you notice another side effect, cynicism, that mold that grows where hope is starved. If every noble idea has a hidden agenda, if every act of generosity masks a social currency exchange, if every philosophy is just a power play with better footnotes, then nothing can disappoint you, because nothing gets close. Safety at the price of warmth. Watch how the spiral colonizes language. You start saying allegedly, supposedly, so-called, like warding spells. You preface sentences with, I could be wrong, so often the content never arrives. You hide behind irony, that flexible armor which ensures you can't be stabbed because you never actually stood anywhere. Irony is the elegant cousin of fear. The spiral changes time. In the past, you pick apart your memories until even your pride in having doubted seems dubious. In the present, you hover above your own experiences, annotating them as they happen, recusing yourself from joy because you haven't verified its source. In the future, you kneel before the specter of, what if I'm fooling myself, and call it wisdom. Time still moves. You just don't ride it. In ethics, you keep your hands clean. We must be careful, you say, while people bleed. You do not want to act on a principle that might not be ultimate. You treat moral action like submitting a paper to a hostile peer review board that never meets. You won't risk doing the imperfect good in front of you for fear of endorsing the wrong grand theory. Meanwhile, someone with fewer footnotes and more nerve pulls a stranger from the river. The spiral recruits allies, the endless feed, the tireless scroll, the perpetual update, always another take, another thread, another debunking of last week's debunking. You confuse being informed with being free. Information can deepen judgment. It can also multiply exit ramps from responsibility. If you can always learn a bit more, you can always act a bit less. Consider how the spiral seduces your identity. Being the one who doesn't fall for it feels superior to being the one who dares. You define yourself by absence, not fooled, not naive, not convinced. You glow with the negative light of negation. But an identity made of negations is a house without furniture, impossible to mess up, impossible to live in. You strip the world to the studs, then you strip the studs. You become proud of your demolition skills. It doesn't occur to you that people do not sleep among blueprints. The spiral's bleak gift is to make you mistake demolition for clarity, rubble for truth. But clarity is not the absence of structures. It is the rightness of the ones you build, test, and repair in the open air. There's a darker turn. When skepticism grows hungry, it needs bigger prey. Small targets, bad arguments, sloppy studies no longer satisfy. You begin to doubt the possibility of reason itself. If every method has assumptions and every assumption sits on soil you haven't sifted, maybe there is no ground. You flirt with the void. The void flirts back. Nihilism will offer you a crown. Nothing matters, therefore nothing binds me. The crown fits for a while, but it rusts. You discover that freedom from commitment is not the same as freedom to create. Without stakes, you cannot tell the difference between a Tuesday and a vow. You grow allergic to meaning because meaning asks for you. What should I do, you ask the spiral. Ask a better question, it replies, then eats the question too. Here's the part you don't want to hear. Doubt is not your enemy. It is your medicine. Medicine has doses. Beyond a point, it stops healing and starts harming. The skeptical spiral is an overdose of a virtue, a caution that has left the hospital, broken into your house, and now guards the door with a polite smile. So how do you walk back up the stairs? First, distinguish precision from paralysis. Ask, what level of certainty do I need for this kind of decision? Not all choices deserve the same burden of proof. A tweet requires one threshold, a marriage another, a law another. Calibrate. Write your thresholds down before the heat of fear can move the goalposts. Second, move from demolition to experimentation. Replace how do I know with what would I see if I were wrong. Skepticism is powerful when it specifies falsifiers. Create prediction logs. Forecast. Give numbers to your confidence, 60%, 80%, 95%. The future will grade you with less malice than your inner prosecutor. Third, set stop rules. I will research for 5 hours, consult 2 experts, list 3 risks, then choose on Friday. The spiral will whisper for one more source. Smile. Keep the appointment with your own will. The ability to end deliberation is not arrogance, it is governance. Fourth, restore the dignity of commitment by designing reversible moves. You fear being trapped, so build exits, pilot projects, small bets, trial periods, drafts. Act in spirals of your own, tight loops of try, observe, adjust, that keep you learning without needing to be omniscient first. Fifth, practice steel manning before striking. Not because your opponent deserves it, they do, but because you deserve the courage of encountering the strongest version of a claim. When you know you have faced the best, your no stops sounding like a reflex and starts sounding like a decision. Sixth, discipline your vocabulary. Ban the reflexive whatever, who knows, it's all subjective, except when you can defend them as actual positions rather than escape hatches. Replace sneer words with questions that cost you something. If I had to act as if this were true for a month, what would I do tomorrow? Seventh, anchor your skepticism in service. Aim your doubt at what protects the vulnerable from your mistakes, not at what protects you from embarrassment. Let the test for withholding action be, does waiting reduce harm or just my discomfort? If it's the latter, move. Eighth, rehumanize your targets. Behind every claim is a person who could be helped or hurt by your stance. Treat your arguments like scaffolding around a patient, not barbed wire around your pride. The spiral loves abstraction. It loses power when you remember hands. Ninth, expose yourself to surprise on purpose. Read outside your tribe, visit where your thesis should fail, invite critiques that sting. Do not do this to confirm your doubt. Do it to teach your doubt to be a teacher again, not a warden. 10th, make a covenant with joy. It is dangerous to live only where you cannot be wrong. Joy is evidence that you stepped into a scene with real stakes. Let some days be unanalyzed on purpose. This is not anti-intellectualism. This is preserving the oxygen that thinking spends. You want something spookier than advice. Fine. Here's the horror. The skeptical spiral can exact a soul tax you won't notice until the bill arrives. It will slowly decompose your inner voice until it speaks only in negations. It will salt the field where conviction might have grown. It will make you mistake spectatorship for wisdom and call that maturity. You will be applauded for your restraint, hired for your caution, promoted for your critical eye, and you will not know what you love, because love requires the scandal of yes. Love of a person, a craft, a city, a problem worth solving, each demands you stand somewhere refutable. The spiral cannot stand anywhere. It is agile, clever, endlessly mobile. It can go anywhere except into the fire. And yet the way out is not to hate doubt. That just flips the addiction. The way out is to place doubt in the right order. Meaning first, method second, fear last. You let meaning point the direction, you let method check your steps, you let fear ride in the backseat and complain about the playlist. You do not hand it the wheel. There is a modest prayer for skeptics who want to live. May I doubt to refine, not to vanish. May my questions return me to the world with cleaner hands and thicker skin. May I end my sentences sometimes with periods. Tonight, you will feel the spiral tug again when you reach for something that matters. It will offer you the cool relief of postponement, wrapped in the language of rigor. Recognize the shape, name it. Then do something small and irreversible. Send the email, publish the draft, schedule the meeting, say, I'm in. You can adjust tomorrow. You cannot retrieve today. One day, if you keep choosing like this, your skepticism will stop spiraling and start orbiting, circling what you care about, close enough to protect, not so close as to smother. It will become a companion again, not a void you narrate from. How do you know? You will ask yourself still, and sometimes the only honest answer will be, not enough, but enough to begin. That sentence will feel like stepping onto a dark stage with the lights in your eyes. The audience will be silence, your knees will tremble, and then you will speak anyway, and the world, contrary to your worst fear, will answer back with something other than laughter. It will answer with the sound of your life, finally underway. Number 3, the abstract refuge. You found a place where nothing can touch you. No deadlines, no blood, no breath that smells like coffee and fear. In this place, there are only angles, axioms, clean lines. Concepts glide past each other like sterile planets. Everything makes sense because nothing has fingerprints. You call it thinking. It's safer to call it what it is, hiding. The doorway is seductive. The world presents a mess, cries in a stairwell, bills stacked like accusations, a decision that will hurt someone no matter what, and you step upward into the mezzanine of theory. Up here, moral texture flattens into diagrams. You move the rods and cones of abstraction, and the scene below rearranges itself instantly. Frictionless, bloodless. A God's eye view without a God's weight. At first, abstraction is a gift. It compresses chaos into handles. It lets you carry big things, justice, beauty, purpose, without dropping them on your toes. But somewhere between the model and the morning, the gift takes your keys. Abstraction is supposed to return you to the world with leverage. Instead, it becomes the world you prefer. You don't come back down. Listen to the pitch you sell yourself. I'm clarifying. I'm building a framework first. I'm looking for the essence. Sometimes you are. Then notice how often the framework expands just when action is due. How often essence requires a new taxonomy the night before you promise to choose. How often clarity means blurring anything that bleeds. The abstract refuge is self-expanding architecture. The longer you live inside it, the more rooms it builds to justify your stay. Notice the subtle comforts. In the refuge, time is elastic. There is always space for another paper, a cleaner notation, a stronger definition. Words are obedient, unlike people. Assumptions hold unless you revise them, unlike the ground. Counterexamples wait patiently while you finish your thought. You can pause a life and death problem with a placeholder. Let X be suffering. X will wait while you make T. The currency up here is elegance. Messy truths lose to graceful lies. You prefer the theorem that clicks to the reality that resists. You say parsimony and mean my preference for curves that close. You say coherence and mean symmetry so pretty it hypnotizes me. You'd rather be wrong in a beautiful way than right in a way that makes you sweat. The refuge offers moral anesthesia. When someone cries, you translate. So we're really exploring the phenomenology of pain. When someone asks for help, you reframe. This is a problem of distributive ethics under uncertainty. When someone bleeds, you use the passive voice. There appears to be harm. The grammar itself floats 2 meters above consequence. Your sentences never stain. There is a particular cruelty the refuge permits. You can redraw a life while the person living it stands 3 floors below, waving. In your model, their desperation becomes a variable. Their history becomes noise. Their demand becomes an edge case. Your confidence grows the more they disappear. At its worst, abstraction launders your cowardice. You are not refusing to help. You are not convinced by the current framework. How does the trap build itself? First, by rewarding distance. The further you climb, the less threatened you feel, and safety feels like wisdom. Second, by punishing friction. Any claim that bites, time, hunger, grief gets labeled contingent, and contingency is what you came here to escape. Third, by confusing map-making with travel. You collect atlases, your boots stay clean. The trap also flatters your identity. You begin to love the sensation of seeing through things. Explanations become dissolvents. You pour theory on reality until it becomes translucent, then complain that nothing is solid. You forget that seeing through every wall turns a house into a ruin. Transparency isn't a home. It's a condition of glass. Language mutates in the refuge. Verbs weaken. We ought to feed them becomes one might consider resource allocation. Subjects vanish. We failed becomes mistakes were made. Responsibility turns spectral, like a ghost you politely nod at before passing through. Your moral spine atrophies under the weightlessness of your own phrases. Even joy starts to feel suspect. You distrust the immediate music that moves you, a stranger's laugh, unless you can explain its structure. You refuse gifts without a proof of purchase. Wonder is forced to present credentials at the door. You live as if experience must earn its right to exist by filing a white paper first. Relationships suffer in ways you don't notice until someone names it. You're never here, they say. You're literally there, but your attention has gone up the staircase again to check whether love is coherent with your current axiology. They ask for presence and you hand them a model. They ask for warmth and you offer the definition of warm. They start to speak in smaller sentences because your abstractions eat their nouns. There's also the quiet addiction to invulnerability. The abstract refuge shields you from the moral humiliation of being wrong in public. Up here, you can revise endlessly before you ever risk your face. You can pre-register your hypotheses about your own heart. You can avoid the messy experiment of telling the truth by preparing a meta-analysis of people who have told similar truths and suffered. Ethically, the refuge cultivates a sterile heroism. You want to do the most good, at the highest level of generality, with the smallest chance of embarrassment. The local becomes beneath you. The particular becomes a bad sample. You're ready to optimize humanity, but unwilling to apologize to your neighbor. I am allocating my effort efficiently, you say, while the person you hurt stares at you as if from another planet. In a sense, they are on another planet, the one with weather. When the trap deepens, you start chasing the asymptote of perfect generality. Every time a claim threatens to require you, you step back to a broader view. But what is action, really? What is responsibility in the final analysis? Every step back gains you altitude and loses you traction. Soon you can narrate the entire landscape and can't take a step without slipping. The refuge also bends risk. Down there, risk is concrete, a job that might fail, a confession that might ruin dinner, a protest that might break your nose. Up here, risk becomes epistemic. What if your category is slightly wrong? What if there's an undiscovered dimension? You begin to accept vast practical risk, inaction's cost, so you can avoid small taxonomic errors in your concept tree. People lose years to a mislabeled branch. What then is the bill? First, atrophy. Muscles unused learn to forget. The will is a muscle. Second, loneliness. Conversations become exhibitions of theory bouncing off theory. No one touches anyone. Third, a subtle cruelty. You punish others for refusing your altitude. If they were smarter, they'd see it my way, you mutter, while they carry the furniture you diagrammed but never lifted. Here is the eerie part. Sometimes the abstract refuge borrows the voice of conscience. It tells you that acting without a perfect model would be irresponsible. It will invoke ethics against the ethical. You might do harm, it says, and sometimes it is right, but often its warning is camouflage for fear. The test? Whether the voice offers a path to refine your action in motion or only instructions to postpone forever. How do you come back down without falling through your own floor? Begin by restoring the sequence. Model, test, revise, commit. The trap breaks the sequence by looping the first two silently in your head until they become a carousel. Get off. Force the loop to exit into the world. Design friction on purpose. Set small, non-negotiable experiments where the reality stuff can push back. Make 3 calls. Spend 1 hour in the room where the thing actually happens. Write policy only after you've done the job badly once. Friction will abrade your pretty edges. It will also give you grip. Time box your theorizing with an external clock. 48 hours to draft the framework, then a decision Tuesday at 10. The refuge hates clocks. It prefers calendars whose days say someday. Reintroduce Tuesday. Put action on it like a nail. Rename what you've been calling edge cases. People live at edges. Treat edges as sacred sites for model repair, not anomalies to be swept off the table. Your map should be scarred by encounters with lives that don't fit it. If the scars offend you, you wanted a shield, not a tool. Reweight elegance. Keep it, but beneath fidelity. Ask obsessively, where does this picture lie to me? Reward ugly truths with action. Celebrate imperfect procedures that move the needle over perfect procedures that move the air. Switch your questions. Instead of what is the essence, try what would count tomorrow as evidence I helped. Instead of is this coherent with my total system, try is this honest enough to own and repair. Instead of does this generalize, try can this particular breathe. Bring nouns back. Say I hurt you instead of harm occurred. Say I will call instead of actionable next steps include outreach. The grammar change is not cosmetic. It is the shortest bridge back to accountability. Your tongue can teach your spine. Practice the descent with rituals that honor concreteness. Cook for someone with your hands. Read aloud to a person, not a crowd. Sweep a floor in silence. These are not anti-intellectual chores. They are recalibrations. The refuge has convinced you that your worth is measured in altitude. It is more often measured in weight carried without ceremony. Create reversible commitments that still cost you something. A week of volunteering before you write the plan. A prototype shipped to 10 users before you publish the manifesto. A conversation with the person you've been theorizing about before you theorize 1 page more. Make the deposit in reality, then let theory audit you, not the other way around. Put a bouncer at the door of your abstractions. Evidence. Not metaphors about evidence. Not confidence about the vibe of the evidence. Actual observations recorded before you are tempted to massage them. Prediction logs, failure journals, postmortems with names. The refuge shrinks when confronted with receipts. Invite contradiction as a dinner guest with a fork, not a hyperlink. Find someone who hates your framework for reasons that scare you. Sit in a room where their reasons breathe. If you can still look them in the eye afterward and say, I'm going to do X, your choice will have been disinfected by reality's own light. Beware of purity here as well. You might try to escape abstraction by becoming anti-theory, celebrating instinct as if ignorance were grit. That's just another refuge with poorer insulation. Keep your models, but treat them like boots, not bedrooms. Wear them into mud. Replace them when they leak. Relearn the taste of stakes. Put your name on something that can fail, not anonymously, not as a handy alias for your meta-self, but you. Failure is abrasive. It will sand away the lacquer that lets you glide past consequences. It will also reveal the grain of the world and your own. Remember why you climbed in the first place. The world hurt and you sought a lever. Keep the lever. Return to the wound. There are people whose lives are made easier by your thinking when it touches ground. A clearer form, a safer protocol, a fairer policy. Your gift was never the altitude, it was the translation. You forgot to finish the sentence. Return with a vow small enough to keep. I will not let a generalization do the work that only a gesture can. Or, I will not mistake symmetry for mercy. Or, I will choose a person before a principle when a person is what stands in front of me. Write it where theory can see it and blush. When the refuge calls you back, and it will, let it. Visit. Draft on the mezzanine. Build the clean line. Then set a timer, mark a door, descend. Meet the world where it resists you, where the air is damp and the numbers smudge. Let a hand tug on your sleeve while you're speaking and change your sentence mid-breath. That is not intellectual failure. That is thought completing its circuit. One more eerie truth. If you stay up there long enough, you become the abstraction. People stop expecting you to show up because you never do. You will be quoted, linked, admired, consulted, like a concept. Concepts cannot hold a body at 3 a.m. They cannot be forgiven. They cannot forgive. They cannot be loved, only used. Come down. The stairs are not as long as you think, and the ground is not as dirty as you fear. It is stained with attempts, yes, and with the silt of people who tried to love each other while thinking less clearly than your cleanest page. But it is warm. Warmth is not an argument. It is what arguments are for. Keep your models like lanterns. Carry them into rooms where someone is cold. If the lantern fails, fix it where the shivering can watch. If the lantern works, resist the holy feeling that tells you to spend the night polishing it instead of passing it around. Your light is truest when it leaves your hands. The abstract refuge will remain. There are nights you will need it, to gain perspective, to rest from noise, to name what pain turned into fog. Use it, but sleep there with the windows open and your shoes by the bed. At dawn, walk out, down the stairs, into the day that cannot be proven in theory but can be honored in practice. And if you must bring one sentence with you, let it be this: I will let my ideas earn their keep by helping what bleeds. Number 5, the stoic ice bath. There's a way to feel invincible without being alive. Lower your pulse, steel your jaw, and call it virtue. Hold your breath until need itself looks embarrassing. Step into an inner winter and name the frost wisdom. If you stay long enough, the cold stops hurting. That's how you know the damage has begun. You didn't start out trying to become a statue. You were tired of being yanked around by moods, ambushed by panic, fooled by hope. Someone taught you the split, what you can control, what you can't. It was a relief, as clean as a blade through knotted rope. You stopped chasing storms with a jar. You let the sky be the sky. That was good. Then you discovered another trick. If you chill every feeling to just above freezing, nothing spills. You call this steadiness. It is sometimes steadiness. Often it is anesthesia with a toga. The ice bath has rules. They sound like discipline. They function like erasure. Rule 1, relabel. Grief becomes expectation management. Joy becomes pleasant but unreliable weather. Anger becomes signal noise. Love becomes an attachment with known failure modes. You think you're naming things accurately. You are removing their ability to move you. Rule 2, rehearse misfortune until it feels like home. You picture your losses daily, the job gone, the lover leaving, and the diagnosis blooming like a dark flower, so that when reality bites you will not yelp. The rehearsal works. The performance of your life arrives and you are unstartled. The audience applauds your composure while your heart forgets the choreography of awe. Rule 3, decaffeinate language. I want becomes I have a preference. I'm hurt becomes I note aversive affect. Verbs weaken. Nouns blur. A smooth emptiness spreads where edges used to cut. You call it maturity. It is the anesthetist speaking through your mouth. Notice the comforts. The ice bath gives you a sense of control that feels like holiness. Cold is clean. Cold is predictable. Emotions become objects you can place on a shelf and dust. You stop expecting others to behave. Your disappointment shrinks. So does your capacity for astonishment. You've shaved the peaks and troughs into a spreadsheet. The sea is a line. There is a moral pleasure too. You are very hard to weaponize. People try to bait you and hit a glacier. They text you provocations and receive a paragraph about agency. They complain you're distant. You offer them a conceptual framework and a cup of mint tea. They wanted heat. You gave them a thermostat. But here's the horror you don't advertise. Temperature is information. Pain is a sensor, not an enemy. Joy is a sensor too, a compass that points toward what grows you beyond the shell you trust. When you numb in the name of virtue, you degrade your instruments. The plane flies smooth into mountains. Look at how the ice creeps into ethics. You learn a trick called acceptance and apply it past its jurisdiction. A friend is harmed, you shrug internally and recite the catechism of control. I cannot change what is outside my will. True, but the inside of your will includes moving your feet, raising your voice, offering your body as resistance. Acceptance does not absolve you from agency. It reminds you of it. The ice bath likes to forget that middle clause. The trap deepens when the cold becomes performance. You cultivate a public stoicism, unimpressed, unflappable, a sovereign of composure. You collect admiration like frost on glass. Strangers tell you they wish they were as calm. They do not see your hands under the table, rigid with a different kind of fear, that if you thaw, you will flood the room. You'll say the ice protects others from your volatility. Sometimes it does. More often it protects you from theirs. Intimacy is heat. Heat makes shapes change. The ice bath teaches you to keep your outlines crisp. You call this self-respect. It can also be cowardice in a disciplined suit. Symptoms, if you're brave enough to check. You overuse the dichotomy of control to dodge grief. I can't control death becomes, I refuse to cry. You confuse not reacting with having responded. I didn't explode becomes, I did my job. You dismiss happiness you didn't plan for as luck, then quarantine it so you can't be accused of needing it. You downregulate desire until nothing is worth the cost of vulnerability. Then you call that peace. You begin to fear people who still feel because they are thermostats in your freezer and they keep tripping the alarm. There is a particular violence the ice bath performs on language. It makes you speak as if you are a committee taking minutes on your life. There was an event. There were feelings. Action items were identified. Nobody bled. Nobody loved. Nobody begged for another hour. You erase the pronouns that tie a sentence to a person. The cold prefers passive voice. It leaves no fingerprints. Let's look at something uglier. The ice bath can become an alibi for cruelty. You call your bluntness truth. You call your distance boundaries. You refuse to apologize because apology would imply your feelings were involved, and you have invested so much in the story that they aren't. When someone tells you you've hurt them, you offer a meditation app. When a child cries, you explain impermanence. You are technically correct and emotionally absent in a way that keeps small souls cold for years. You wanted ballast. You built armor. Armor is not bad, it just isn't skin. Skin feels wind and sun and the warning heat of a pan before it scars. Armor only knows impact. Spend enough time inside it and you'll mistake impact for reality's only language. What does the ice bath cost? Start with timing. You become slow where speed matters and fast where slowness saves. You pause to observe the mind when you should grab the boy before he runs into the road. You rush through grief because you decided in advance what it was allowed to teach you. You cultivate evenness so disciplined that you can no longer accelerate when urgency is ethical. Then creativity. Cold makes subtlety brittle. Play requires risk and risk requires appetite. If all appetite is suspect, your art becomes technical instead of dangerous. You'll produce correct shapes that never sweat. Your work will be admired by people who also forgot to tremble. Then love. Love is a furnace that insists on oxygen. The ice bath reduces oxygen to the minimum survivable dose. You will attract people who are tired of drama. Good. You will also filter out people who demand you show up with a pulse, and they are often the ones who would have made your life larger than your plans. You will try to reassure yourself by invoking sages who sat still in storms. Remember what you forget. Their stillness was not numbness. They wept, they praised, they raged against their own pettiness. Their discipline was not a freezer. It was a hearth built strong enough that others could warm their hands. If your discipline chills the room, you've built the wrong thing. How to thaw without drowning. 1. Redraw the control dichotomy as a triangle. Control, influence, witness. Control your choices, your speech, your standards. Influence people you can serve, structures you can pressure, outcomes you can probabilistically tilt. Witness realities you cannot move today but must not go blind to. The ice bath collapses influence and witness to avoid messy attempts. Recover the middle. Attempt is dignity. 2. Install heat checks. 3 times a day, ask, what moved me in the last 2 hours? If the answer is nothing, treat it like a smoke alarm. Go touch something living. 10 minutes, no abstractions, a call, a stretch, a song that humiliates your composure. The point is not drama, it's resensitization. 3. Practice clean grief. Set a clock for 20 minutes. Name aloud what you lost, person, chance, innocence. Use nouns. Cry if crying comes. When the timer ends, breathe, drink water, write one sentence about what honor looks like for the lost today. The ice bath tells you grief is indulgence. Clean grief is maintenance for a soul that still intends to act. 4. Reframe equanimity as availability, not absence. Your calm is not an empty room. It is a stable table others can set their chaos on without it tipping. That means you must be there. Presence is the part the ice bath forgets. Schedule presence like a duty. Fully available to this person from 19 to 20, phone away. Availability without warmth is a waiting room. Bring tea. 5. Write with heat verbs for a week. Replace I noticed with I felt. Replace it seems with I think. Replace there is frustration with I am angry. If you fear the pendulum, add a tail, and I will not let anger choose my voice. This is not indulgence. It is restoring the chain of custody between sensation and choice. 6. Do one unarmored, generous act daily. Something that can be refused, misread, or ignored. A compliment with no hedge, an apology that admits harm without explaining it, an offer to help that costs you time. The ice bath prefers the exchange rate to be favorable. Practice giving at a loss. Loss builds heat that materials can survive in. 7. Let joy be a responsibility. Make a list titled Approved Ways I Am Allowed to Enjoy My Life. Include small, embarrassingly specific pleasures you will not justify. Peaches over the sink, dancing badly, building something ugly that works. Treat joy like sleep. Non-negotiable maintenance that improves performance on every metric you pretend to care about. 8. Install anger etiquette. Anger is not a bug in your system. It is an alarm. Write rules for using it well. I will not email from inside anger. I will name the boundary by noon tomorrow. I will ask for one concrete change. I will lift something heavy before I speak. You are relearning fire safety, not letting the house burn. 9. Practice warm stoicism. Keep the virtues, courage, temperance, justice, wisdom, but measure them by how they feel to other people, not just how they look inside your head. Courage that never shakes isn't courage, it's insulation. Justice that never cries at the right funeral isn't justice, it's administration. 10. Rehearse success, not just loss. The ice bath trains you to expect theft so you're never surprised. Balance the ledger. Visualize the job working, the lover staying, the protest changing a policy. Let your nervous system practice receiving good. If good arrives and you've only rehearsed losing, you will sabotage it because your home is cold. There's a fear under all this cold. If you thaw, you'll drown. That is because you never practiced regulated heat, only blast furnace or freezer. Mimic the body you live in, homeostasis through micro-adjustments. When you feel the swell, lengthen the exhale. When you feel the slump, lengthen the inhale. When you feel numb, add weight. Walk with a bag, do manual tasks. When you feel raw, add rhythm. Music, rocking, steps counted. Build knobs, not switches. A more brutal correction. Apologize where your frost burned, not sorry if you felt hurt. Say, I chose distance when you needed me. That was safer for me, not better for you. I will do X differently next time. Then do it. Heat is proven in how you warm the same room you once cooled. Revisit the split you love so much. What you can't control, weather, death, the opinions of strangers. What you can, whether you become weather for the people near you. Do you lower the temperature when their fear rises, or do you keep it so low they stop knocking? Control, properly understood, is stewardship of your effect on climates you share. Here's the eerie truth. The ice bath will not confess. Extreme self-containment is seductive to institutions. They will hire your coolness, promote your restraint, praise your low reactivity. Your career will thrive while your interior goes pale. One day, success will feel like a refrigerated room where you are the last warm object, and you will be tempted to finish the job. Don't. You are not here to win the museum award for least cracked statue. You are here to be a person who can be leaned on and laughed with, who can hold a dying hand without narrating acceptance, who can face a riot inside and still choose the next useful act without filing the feeling under unhelpful. Keep the parts of stoicism that keep your will from dissolving. Ditch the counterfeit that keeps your life from occurring. If you must have a mantra, let it be one that honors temperature. I will be calm enough to choose, warm enough to care, and fierce enough to protect what care requires. The ice will whisper that you are getting soft. Smile. Soft things survive winters that glass cannot. Tonight, when the cold offers you its old bargain, numb now, suffer less later, answer with a smaller, braver trade. Feel enough to know where to stand, and then stand there long enough to warm a square meter of the world. The body remembers how. The heart does, too. It has been knocking under the ice patiently, like a neighbor with a casserole. Open the door, let the steam out, invite someone in. Number 6, the utilitarian ledger. You want to be good, so you keep books. You turn your conscience into a spreadsheet. Inputs, outputs, expected values, counterfactuals. You whisper the creed of clean arithmetic, maxima, minimize, optimize, and it feels like holiness because the numbers don't cry. They just add. They just sort. They just point to the best. At first, the ledger saves you from sentimentality. It rescues you from the noble waste of gestures that help no one. You stop airing out your virtue in performative ways and start moving real needles for real lives. That's the bright beginning. Then, slowly, the spreadsheet eats the soul that built it. Because the ledger is a tool, and tools left in charge become gods. Listen to how the trap sets. You measure, so you pay attention to what can be measured. You compare, so you compress unlike goods into the same unit. You plan, so you shun anything that can't forecast. You stack probabilities so high your courage drowns in decimals. The ledger's default is delay. There is always a model you could tune, a tractable cause you might have missed, a higher impact path if you just wait one more quarter. You name this prudence. It is procrastination wearing a lab coat. The ledger changes the temperature of your mercy. A pleading face becomes a data point. A local need becomes an inefficient allocation. And the child in front of you is just one sample from a population you intend to save in bulk. If it doesn't scale, you quietly stop seeing it. The most good becomes a razor that trims away the only good you were positioned to do this afternoon. There's another seduction, the absolution of self. When goodness is an equation, you can cuddle your narcissism without guilt. You can stay at your desk, infinitely optimizing, while your body never dirties its hands. You can reject requests for help because the spreadsheet says no. Never mind that you wrote the cells, chose the priors, weighted the criteria. You have hidden your will in the math and called it neutrality. Watch for symptoms. You search for causes not because they need you, but because they flatter your sense of efficiency. The messy neighbor's crisis is low leverage. The obscure project with spectacular charts is high leverage. You live in horizons too far to breathe. 10 years, 50 years, astronomical waste. Meanwhile, you step over a local wound on your way to designing a future no one here will survive to thank you for. You reclassify tenderness as a bias to be debugged. If a choice hurts, you assume error, never once considering that some pain is the cost of refusing to outsource your conscience to math. You cannot set a threshold for enough. Every donation, every hour, every kindness dissolves into the acid of, but the marginal dollar over there still buys more qualities. Your life becomes a moral debt spiral with interest. The ledger colonizes language. You start speaking in mouthfuls of optimization jargon to describe human choices. This friendship is not cost-effective. This grief is non-productive. This apology does not reduce harm at scale. Your sentences grow crisp and bloodless. People stop recognizing themselves in your stories. They begin to look at you like an actuary at a wake. It gets worse. The ledger distorts reality through the law you keep forgetting. What you measure becomes your idol. What you incentivize becomes your creature. What you target becomes your blind spot. You optimize a metric and the world routes around it. Your impact goes up on paper while the thing itself limps. You smile at a rising line and ignore the room that cooled to make it rise. This is Goodhart's ghost, and it likes the taste of good intentions. Ethically, the ledger tempts you to triage as a personality, not a decision. Triage is brutal but necessary in constrained crises. The trap is when you start living like the whole of reality is a field hospital and you are always on shift. You start ranking friends by tractability, love by expected return, art by attention capture. You create a life where nothing is chosen for its singular face. Everything must justify itself in general. Then there's the infinite escalator of cause comparison. If you admit futures into the calculation, you will always be able to conjure a spectral, more important cause to embarrass the cause you could serve today. If you admit low probability, high payoff scenarios, you can chain yourself to the altar of 1 in a million gambles while passing by a million 1-in-1 needs. You call this scope sensitivity. Sometimes it is. Often it's a refusal to live at human scale because human scale can see you. Let's name the injuries. Moral injury. When you treat harm as a ledger entry, you will eventually choose in ways that save more by hurting some. That is not per se evil. Sometimes it is the only honest math. But your body will remember the faces. Numbers can't digest screams. If you never let yourself grieve the partial cruelties in your best work, your empathy will calcify or revolt. You will grow cold or you will burn out. Temporal anorexia. Because the ledger always threatens to find a better use for the next hour, you don't eat the hours you have. You optimize leisure until it's a spreadsheet of micro rests. Joy becomes a cheat meal. You wake at 40, surrounded by charts, and discover you have no memories that glow. Moral outsourcing. You begin to rely on the nearest authority with better models than yours. You donate not to causes, but to confidence. You stop asking whether your gifts match your callings. You ask only whether your gifts match someone else's ranking. You become a small investor in virtue, never an owner. Sanctimony by subtraction. You rehearse the line, I care about outcomes, not feelings. Try saying it at a funeral. If it still feels wise, you have lost something you do not know how to measure. Something that once told you when a choice was decent, even when it was clever. Now the eerie part. The ledger is right about some things you'd rather ignore. Sincerity can waste lives. Grand gestures can anesthetize guilt more than they heal the world. When money and time are finite, failing to compare options is not innocence, it is negligence. If you throw out the ledger, you drift back into the warm incompetence the ledger was built to cure. So the question is not ledger or not, it is who is in charge here and what cannot be priced. How to unshackle without going soft. 1. Move from optimization to satisficing with guardrails. Before you analyze, decide your floor. Good enough defined in public language. Example, I give X% of income to causes that clear this bar. I spend Y hours weekly on hands-on local service. I keep Z hours for family and art. Then stop optimizing inside the guardrails unless new evidence clears a high bar. The point is to make the ledger your servant, not your appetite. 2. Adopt the dual wallet. Have an impact wallet, cold math, and a covenant wallet, warm loyalties. Impact wallet funds the best arguments you can find, deworming, policy, pandemics, whatever survives steel manning. Covenant wallet funds the particular, your neighbor's rent, your mother's medication, the poetry venue that keeps your city human. Write the ratio in advance, say 70-30, then stop second-guessing every covenant dollar with but qualies. The ratio already honored that objection. 3. Protect sacred values explicitly. Write the few things you refuse to trade. Children for efficiency, honesty for reach, dignity for speed. Do this before you're tempted. We do not lie to increase donations. We do not treat people as means even when the ends are bright. If a metric demands a sacred value as fuel, the metric starves. 4. Install decision deadlines and stop rules. No more indefinite optimization. We compare 3 options for 2 weeks. We decide Friday at 17. We revisit in 6 months unless a threshold is crossed. Write thresholds. If this policy reduces complaints but increases despair by X, we roll back. The ledger loves infinite time. Time box it. 5. Run face-first audits. Once a month, pick a beneficiary and spend a day with their actual life. No decks, no dashboards. Let their particularity bruise your generalities. Bring back one change to your model that the spreadsheet would never have noticed. Metrics need faces like lungs need air. 6. Apply the Goodhart check. For every metric, write the ways it can be gamed and how you will notice. Pair each KPI with a KPI shadow, a qualitative signal that warns when the number is rising by cheating reality. Reward your team for catching false wins. Pay bonuses for honesty, not just slopes. 7. Practice local courage. Every week, do one small good with no scale story. Figure friend's car, walk the frightened neighbor home. Cover the shift for the exhausted nurse. You are not betraying the future. You are retraining your will to recognize goods that won't submit to a chart. This inoculates you against the moral vertigo of living only in enormous numbers. 8. Keep a moral burn log. Whenever the ledger forces a hard triage, write what it cost, The names, the tears you didn't shed, the arguments you used to sleep. Then grieve on purpose. Invite someone to witness it. This is not indulgence. It is maintenance for the part of you that must stay tender to remain trustworthy. 9. Use the reversibility lever. Prefer actions that are high expected value and reversible. When actions are irreversible, demand thicker consensus and slower speed. The ledger tends to flatten all interventions into comparable units. Reversibility reintroduces moral physics. 10. Separate choosing from justifying. Make the decision in a room that contains silence, values, and enough math to be sane. Write the justification later. If the document begins to wag the decision, you have ceded your agency to the optics of reason rather than its service. 11. Maintain a no justification fund. A small percent of time or money you spend with zero explanation by feel on people and projects that make your life more human. The fund is not a loophole. It is an admission that not all goods are commensurable and that your ability to perceive value is partly trained by contact with what cannot be priced. 12. Audit your identity. If the efficient one has become your moral costume, remove it for a month. Do good anonymously. Refuse the status returns that optimization culture pays you in. If your appetite for goodness shrinks without applause, your ledger was feeding your ego more than your ethics. 13. Keep a diminishing returns journal. Log where the last 20% of analysis rarely changes the choice. Set a policy. Stop at 80% certainty for low-stakes calls, 90% for medium, reserve 95% for existential bets. Tattoo this where your perfectionism can see it. 14. Institute faces before cases meetings. Start strategy sessions with a story of one person affected, told by someone who met them. Only then open the models. This is not manipulation, it is calibration. The reminder that cases are composed of faces. 15. Remember the why in verbs, not numbers. Once a week, write one page that begins, "We do this because we love," and finish with a verb. Protect, feed, build, free, listen. Numbers clarify the how much. Verbs protect the what for. You worry that these repairs will make you sloppy. They won't if you keep the ledger in its place, as a lamp, not a law, as a witness, not a warden. The point is to refuse the false binary. Either be a bleeding heart that wastes resources or a precise mind that forgets the living. Your task is both. A precise heart. A story you must allow. Sometimes the highest expected value is to become the sort of person who can be trusted at close range. Trust doesn't scale like a vaccine, but it multiplies like yeast. Cities are built on it. Movements survive by it. Families heal inside it. The ledger cannot model how a single apology alters a lineage, how a promise kept lower the temperature of a house for 50 winters. Model what you can. Bow to what you cannot. Act anyway. There is a darker warning. Institutions love ledger people because they are predictable and can be shamed into endless productivity with the right graph. You will be promoted for squeezing more out of your day, praised for impact density, applauded for the asceticism that keeps you away from messy loyalties. You will be valuable and, if you're not careful, vacant. One morning you will stare at the ceiling and discover that the only thing you know how to do with goodness is to schedule it. Refuse the vacancy. Give yourself a human-sized vow. I will let math refine my mercy, not replace it. I will compare options, then pick one and love it beyond reason. I will keep my promises even when a spreadsheet suggests a marginally better promise to someone else. I will feed the person in front of me first. I will not talk about the future as if the present were already expendable, and when the ledger returns with its clean, chilling voice. There is a more efficient use of your care. Answer it with a sentence, "It cannot compute but must learn to serve. I am a person, not a function." Then do the next particular good with steady hands, and the next systemic good with clear eyes. Let the numbers help you aim. Let the faces tell you when you've hit something worth keeping. Number 7, the rulebook alibi. You want to be good without being responsible, so you learn a magic sentence that turns heat into ice. I followed the rules. It's a passphrase at the gates of guilt. Behind it, you are clean. Behind it, you convert the thorny into the tidy. Behind it, people bleed and you file a form. Rules feel holy because they are stable. They don't stutter, they don't beg, they don't have faces. You were a child once and the rule saved you. Look both ways. Don't touch the stove, say please. Somewhere along the way, you upgraded the software. If I obey the rule, I cannot be blamed. You mistook safety from chaos for absolution from consequence. That's the alibi. At first, it's innocent. Standards protect the weak from your moods. Procedure keeps you from improvising cruelty. The law constrains the tyrant in you. Good. Then a colder truth glides in. Rules let you outsource your conscience. You say, policy requires, protocol dictates, the system won't allow. The sentence ends there, and so does your moral imagination. You have learned to move harm by passive voice. Harm occurred. To whom? By whom? The grammar refuses to say. The trap fattens inside institutions. You discover that a uniform, an ID badge, a brand, a job description can wrap you in legitimacy like a Kevlar vest. It's above my pay grade. Those are the guidelines. Compliance is non-negotiable. You begin to believe the vest is your character. You treat your office as a sacrament that removes your fingerprints from the things you actually chose. Notice how the alibi grows tentacles. Consistency is cruelty. You turn treat everyone the same into refuse every exception, even when the exception is the very point of justice. You would rather be uniformly unfair than locally merciful, because mercy requires you to stand there with your name on it. Escalation as erasure. When the rule produces harm, you open a ticket. The ticket ascends flights of fluorescent halls until it disappears in a warm cloud of nothing. Meanwhile, the harm continues. You keep your hands perfect. You sleep. Audit over aid. You become a compliance auditor in a burning building. Excellent at forms, poor at buckets. Your first instinct is to correct terminology. Technically, that's not a fire, it's smoke. Correct. And the child still coughs. Legality as morality. You smuggle aloud into good. If the handbook says yes, you treat dissent as sentiment, conscience as inefficiency, repair as insubordination. You let the law become a limbic system because your own scares you. Checklists as character. You confuse completion with care. Every box is green, the room is gray. You present the report like a shield. Someone says, but we were hurt. You say, the process worked. The alibi colonizes language. Listen to your verbs with a stethoscope. We regret any inconvenience that may have been experienced instead of, I delayed your surgery. Per policy, the account was terminated instead of, I pressed the button knowing you would lose your job. We cannot make exceptions instead of, I won't risk my standing to help you. Rules start as tools. You turn them into third-person ghosts that haunt your sentences and absolve your body. Here is the eerie engine beneath. Rules simplify. Reality resists. The more you worship simplification, the more you must sand people down to fit the slot where the rule can grab them. You begin to resent irregularity, also known as humanity. You call living texture edge cases. You put the edges in the trash. There's pleasure, of course. The rulebook spares you the embarrassment of moral exposure. No trembling, no pleading, no I judged, I might be wrong. You get the thrill of power without fingerprint residue, enforcement as invisibility cloak. You can be the knife and blame the recipe. Costs arrive quietly, then all at once. Character atrophy. Judgment is a muscle. If you let policy lift for you, it withers. Soon you can't tell the difference between a violation and an emergency, between a loophole and a lifeline. You become obedient at the cost of becoming useless where a person is needed. Bureaucratic cruelty. Institutions that cannot make principled exceptions rot from within. People stop bringing real problems because problems without slots are punished. Your fairness becomes a machine that treats a mother and a fraudster identically because it's too delicate to tell them apart. Legitimacy collapse. When rules devour justice, the governed learn to hate your order. They stop cooperating. They hack your forms. They flee to black markets of mercy. You blame non-compliance. The mirror has an opinion. Private diminishment. You will be praised as reliable, professional, process-driven. You will also feel small. Someone will ask you years from now, so what did you do when it mattered? You will recite a policy number. It will sound like a tombstone. The alibi recruits saints too. It will quote philosophers about universality and reversibility. It will invoke duty against the very people duty was invented to protect. It will confuse impartiality with indifference. It will strap the word principle to your refusal to act when principle hurts. This isn't an argument for chaos. A world without rules is a carnival for predators. The indictment is narrower and sharper. You use the rule to remove your risk from their need. You armored yourself in consistency to dodge the humiliation of saying, I choose this exception, I accept the cost, I will sign my name. How to break the alibi without becoming a whim. 1. Reorder the stack. Purpose, principles, policies, procedures. Purpose, the end you serve, protect, heal, free, feed. Principles, the non-negotiables that keep you honest, no lies, no cruelty, dignity first. Policies, reusable decisions that usually advance the purpose while honoring principles. Procedures, the repeatable steps. When a lower layer violates a higher one, you escalate up the stack, not down the hall. 2. Install the responsibility mirror. Before enforcing a rule, rewrite the action in the first person without policy words. I will deny this medicine tonight to a person in pain. If you cannot bear the sentence, you cannot bear the act. You are not allowed to hide behind acronyms you can't pronounce out loud. Study 3. Create grace corridors. Designated, transparent spaces where trained people can make principled exceptions. Small budgets, time windows, emergency authorities. Require 2 signatures, policy and conscience. Publish the exception with an explanation tied to purpose and principle. Reward wise use. Discipline cowardly non-use. 4. Keep an exception ledger with names. When you deny relief, log the face and the reason. When you grant it, log the cost and the protection you invoked. Purpose, principle. Review monthly. Patterns of cruelty and favoritism emerge in ledgers. Fix the rule where the exceptions cluster. Fix yourself where the denials do. 5. Switch to active voice and name subjects. Ban, it was decided. Require, I decided. Ban, per policy. Require, I applied policy X and I own the outcome. Language is not cosmetic. It is the shortest road back to being human. 6. Install the harmed person hearing. Before a hard enforcement, someone affected gets 10 minutes to speak to a human with authority. Not to win, but to be seen and to let information enter the room that the rule cannot carry. Most cruelty thrives in rooms where the harmed are theoretical. 7. Define sacred constraints explicitly. Write down what you refuse to do even if the rule says you may. We do not humiliate to deter. We do not separate families for speed. We do not destroy livelihoods to meet a metric. Post them above the policy shelf. If your sacreds collect dust, your gods live elsewhere. 8. Train judgment reps. Once a week, practice scenarios that require value trade-offs. Not what does the manual say, but what keeps faith with purpose while preserving fairness. Give feedback, not just grades. Promote people for courage plus reasoning, not obedience plus email skills. 9. Time box the deferral reflex. If you hear yourself say, I'll escalate, set a clock. If no response by 17, I decide. Bureaucracy loves diffusion of accountability across time. Pin time down. Choose. 10. Run the grandmother test. Could you sit across a kitchen table from someone you love least and explain your decision without jargon until they understand it, even if they still disagree? If not, you're hiding behind furniture. 11. Faces before cases rituals. Start policy meetings with one real person's story that your rule touched last week. Then open the spreadsheet. This is not sentimentality. It is calibration against the abstracting tendency of power. 12. Audit for policy capture. Have outsiders examine where rules began to serve the institution more than the purpose. The longer a rule lives, the more it forgets why it was born. Sunsets and renewals keep amnesia from becoming doctrine. 13. Write a refusal clause into your identity. I retain the right to say, this is legal but wrong. Store up small acts of principled disobedience so you have a spine when the large act arrives. Practice with risk you can afford before the risk you cannot. 14. Build reparations muscle. When a rule hurts someone unnecessarily, provide repair without defensiveness. Apology, restitution, policy revision with a date. You do not lose authority by admitting harm. You recover the only kind worth having. 15. Measure justice, not just throughput. Pair every efficiency metric with a fairness metric and a dignity metric. Throughput without justice creates desserts that look like progress on paper. If your dashboards can't show dignity, your dashboards are dim. There's a counter voice already arguing, if we allow discretion, we invite bias. True, discretion without training and transparency breeds favoritism, but rules without discretion breed injustice. The solution is not to remove judgment, it is to civilize it, train it, document it, review it, tie it to purpose, and give it a cost so you don't spend it like confetti. A darker truth. The rulebook will love you if you are frightened. It will offer you promotions for being a safe pair of hands. You will be asked to sign off on things that make you quieter at night and hollower in the morning. You will become the person others come to for what the policy says, never for what the right thing might be. People will respect you. Fewer will trust you with their wounds. Stop confusing defensibility with decency. The point of rules is to scaffold care at scale, not to replace conscience at speed. If a rule protects the institution while injuring the purpose, break it in daylight and write the report that changes it. If you cannot, step out of the chain that uses your signature to launder harm. When the audit of your life arrives, no one will ask to see your compliance folder. They will ask simpler questions that don't fit a checklist. Who did you protect when the rule failed? Whose face did you keep in the room? Which exception did you own because it was right, not safe? Did you ever say, this stops with me, and then stop it? Carry the rule book. It keeps amateurs from burning the house. But keep your name too, because houses are for people who knock at 3 a.m. with swollen eyes and no paperwork. Open the door. Let the rule help you organize the blankets. Let your conscience choose who gets the first one. And when someone asks how you decided, don't say policy. Say the sentence that ends the alibi and begins adulthood. I did, because that is what our purpose demanded, and I accept the cost. Number 8, metaphysics of me. You didn't mean to turn yourself into a theory. It happened the way frost forms on glass, quietly, beautifully, and between you and the weather. One day you were a person moving through rooms. The next you were an object of inquiry, a case study with your name on the cover. You started to have experiences the way a scientist has samples. You stopped trusting unexamined joy. You began to narrate your breath. It felt noble. The world was confusing. You would be rigorous. Others thrashed around in moods. You would have a model. You devoured typologies, drew maps of your motivations, built a taxonomy of your sins. You called it self-knowledge. On good days it is. On most days it's a mirror maze. You take one step forward and collide with your own description. Listen closely. The more complete your concept of you becomes, the smaller the place for you to breathe. Every label is a line on a blueprint. Every blueprint is a room. Rooms are useful until they are everything. Then you wander your own house with a clipboard instead of a heartbeat. What does the trap want? It wants to convert living into knowing about living. It wants to exchange the heat of an event for the cleanliness of an explanation. It wants the safety of a finished diagram. Safety is not evil. It is just incompatible with being surprised. And being surprised is how the horizon moves. Here's how the metaphysics of me seduces. First, by promising control through coherence. If you can explain yourself completely, your wounds, your habits, your triggers, you will never again be ambushed by your own weather. The pitch is irresistible. But coherence is a jealous god. It will demand that you amputate any appetite that doesn't fit the system. You'll call it maturity. It will often be self-erasure with footnotes. Second, by offering absolution through ontology. If this is what I am, then you no longer have to wrestle with this is what I do. Essences don't apologize. Natures don't choose. You smuggle from metaphysics what ethics should pay for in sweat, responsibility. Third, by flattering you with depth. Others act. You excavate. Others speak. You meta-speak about the origin of speech. You become the person who interrupts their own confession to analyze the structure of confessing. You mistake the embarrassment you cause for wisdom. Symptoms, if you'd like to diagnose your diagnosis. You narrate in real time. Instead of I'm angry, you think, fascinating, anger is arising. Historically, this connects to autonomy threats. Note the somatic markers. By the time your body finishes the paragraph, the moment is over. You were present for your commentary. You missed your life. You pre-approve feelings. Joy must submit a form explaining its consistency with your current narrative arc. If it lacks citations, it waits in the lobby. Sorrow must prove it is earned. Spontaneity is detained at the border and sent home for failing to declare its contents. You relate to people as mirrors. Lovers become prisms for your self-concept. Useful insofar as they refract your light in interesting ways. Friends become instruments calibrated to confirm your latest self-theory. When they refuse, you assume incompatibility rather than wonder whether you are asking them to assist a lab, not share a table. You outsource choices to identity. I'm the kind of person who becomes a spell that conjures action from essence. It feels strong. It is actually a way to skip courage. The kind of person you are is an afterimage of what you repeatedly chose. You keep a museum of explanations for your worst patterns and sell tickets to anyone who challenges you. As someone with insert antique vocabulary for hurt, I tend to. The sentence ends with your hands clean. You distrust change that arrives naked. When someone says you were kind, you immediately wonder what function that kindness served in your strategy. If you cannot find one, you suspect you were fake. You don't believe in generosity unless you can reduce it. There is an eerie pleasure in being your own experiment. You set conditions, you induce states, you log outcomes. The control is intoxicating, and so is the distance. You get to be both subject and scientist, pain and tweezer. In that distance, something vital begins to thin. Call it innocence, or trust, or the ability to be taken briefly by something you didn't schedule. The traps costs accrue slowly, like interest on a quiet loan, alienation from the present. Events arrive as data, not food. A sunset becomes information about your capacity for awe. A child's joke becomes evidence of your play deficit. Kiss becomes case study. Your senses report to a supervisor who never sleeps. Ethical anemia. When what I am overrules what I owe, you can accept ugliness as nature. I'm avoidant becomes a license to leave. I'm intense becomes a hall pass for harm. You upgrade excuses into metaphysics and wonder why your friends start carrying umbrellas under clear skies. Performative stability. Your self-story hardens into a brand. You decorate it with the right struggles, the right strengths. Soon you are acting as you rather than from you. The brand is admired. The person is bored and afraid of being caught improvising. Intimacy that never lands. The more exquisitely you know how you attach, the less you attach. You can name your patterns at dinner while never letting anyone reach the room where patterns go to die. Your partners learn to accept your insight as a substitute for your presence. Some look grateful. Some leave without slamming the door because you pre-wrote the breakup essay for them. Memory laundering. Every time you update your model, your past edits itself to fit. The unclassifiable disappears. The inconvenient goodness of your enemies evaporates. The shame that doesn't support your current persona goes into cold storage. You feel consistent. You are becoming less true. Cowardice with a magnifying glass. Big choices shrink beneath scrutiny until only more research appears moral. You'll say, I cannot commit until I know whether this aligns with my deepest self, by which you mean I prefer a map of the forest to the sound of my feet on leaves. What about the good that introspection promised? It's still there. Self-reflection can dismantle inherited lies. It can install valves in rage. It can teach you where you end and someone else begins. The indictment is narrower. You turned a mirror into a doctrine. You made ontology do the work of courage. You asked your description of yourself to fight your battles for you. So how do you escape the metaphysics of me without falling back into the stupor you fled? 1. Replace ontology with practice, verbs over nouns. Ban I am X from decisions for 30 days. Use I will do Y and I refuse Z. Identity language is viscous. It sticks to everything. Practice with action language until your choices have muscle memory. I keep my word, not I'm loyal. I return calls, not I'm the kind of friend who... When you act, the sentence writes itself backward into a self-worth trusting. 2. Institute the 2-hour veto on meta. During hard conversations and living moments, dinners, arguments, firsts, lasts, forbid analysis for 2 hours. No frameworks, no typologies, no what this really means about me. After 2 hours, you may journal like a forensic poet. The delay protects the event from being immediately harvested for theory. 3. Build a body-first check. Before you think about what a feeling says about your history, identify 3 bodily facts. Where it sits, what it wants your hands to do, whether your breath is shallow or deep. Respond with a physical adjustment. Walk, breathe, stretch, drink water, touch wood. The self that lives in a chest has jurisdiction. The self that lives in a paragraph does not. 4. Create identity Sabbaths. Choose one day a week where you do not use identity predicates to justify any action. You cannot say because I'm introverted, extroverted, attachment styles X. You must cite reasons that would persuade a stranger. This trains your brain to argue in public language rather than private gospel. 5. Practice vow-making at human scale. Write 3 small vows that bind you beyond mood. I answer messages from these 5 people within 24 hours. I donate X monthly to Y. I take my niece out once a month. Vows construct a self by promise, not by self-portrait. You become the kind of person who keeps particular promises. The generalities can chase you if they like. 6, install witnesses, not an audience. Witnesses, 2 or 3 people who know your life as a chronology, not a theory. Give them permission to call you out when your explanations begin to outpace your behavior. Pay them in gratitude, not arguments. 7, cultivate bad art of the present. Make things that cannot be explained better than they can be done. Ugly pottery, imperfect songs, messy food for friends. These acts are antidotes to your impulse to narrate. If you catch yourself explaining the piece, ruin it deliberately and keep going. You're learning to prefer done to described. 8, ban diagnostic introductions. For a season, when meeting new people, do not lead with your frameworks. Do not turn getting to know you into comparing maps. Lead with a question that makes you vulnerable and useful. How can I help? Or what would make tonight kinder? You will itch to prove you know yourself. Resist. Let yourself be known. 9, keep a contradiction garden. Write down traits that don't fit the story you sell yourself. I'm gentle and sometimes cruel, brave and often evasive. Water them with instances. The goal is not to resolve the tension, it's to host it without panic. People are mosaics. Every tile you banish for neatness becomes a sharp thing in the dark. 10, practice moral plain speech. Say I hurt you, say I lied, say I ran. Then shut up for 30 seconds so the sentence can land. You may explain later, but the first sentence must be a noun punching a verb. This retrains your mouth to carry weight before it carries nuance. 11, use time-bounded meta. Set a timer for analysis, e.g. 25 minutes, ending with a decision deliverable, a behavior you'll test within 48 hours. If no action follows, analysis is demoted. Insight that does not alter conduct is entertainment. 12, separate mystery from confusion. Mystery is what exceeds you but feeds you. Confusion is what paralyzes you while flattering your depth. If thinking makes you kinder, warmer, clearer, mystery. If it makes you hesitant, colder, cleverer, confusion. Treat mystery with reverence. Treat confusion with deadlines. 13, reverse the microscope. Others first anthropology. Spend 1 day a week practicing intense curiosity about someone else's interior without connecting it to yours. Tell me what it's like to be you, full stop. Do not compare. Do not harvest. Repair the part of you that treats people as articles in your syllabus. Keep an action ledger with verbs. Each night, list only actions that touch the world. Called, cooked, apologized, built, carried, returned, refused. No insights. Over time, this ledger becomes a biography written in verbs. When despair whispers that you are a fraud, show it the list. Fraud is loud. Evidence is quiet. 15. Write a no-myth clause. Promise yourself not to make a cosmology out of a coping strategy. The tool that helped you name your fear is not the architecture of reality. Say it out loud. This framework is a flashlight, not a sun. Then turn it off sometimes and learn where your feet remember the floor. There's a darker repair. Apologize to those you studied instead of loved. Not the abstract, I'm sorry if my self-work made me distant, but the concrete. I used you as a mirror. I asked you to help me be consistent instead of letting you be human. I am choosing you over my story today. Here is how. Then do the how. Do the how. You might fear that without a tight concept of yourself, you will be prey to chaos, that you'll wake up variant and inconsistent, unhirable to the gods of clean identity. You will, a little. The weather will change more than your theory allowed. Your preferences will surprise you. You will say yes to a thing people like you don't do, and the sky will not fall. In that looseness, there is oxygen. Oxygen is flammable. So is life. An eerie warning before we close. Institutions adore people who have a polished metaphysics of me. Brands can partner with them. HR can categorize them. Movements can assign them talking points. The more coherent you present, the more you will be invited to play the same chord forever. Your reward will be a name that travels farther than you do, printed on posters above a person who is alone. Resist the poster. Choose the kitchen table where coherence breaks and kindness holds. Choose the workshop where your hands forget the story and remember the skill. Choose the road where your idea of yourself has to jog to keep up. Keep a small shrine to the fact that you are not a closed form, but a weather system with a will. When the metaphysics of me whispers tonight, explain yourself so you can be safe. Answer with a sentence that ends the spell. I will risk being changed by what I do. Then do something that can change you. Make the call, say the unhedged yes, forgive the unearned, stand where you will have to feel. If you need a prayer, make it brief and practical. Let my descriptions be tools, not cages. Let my actions teach me who I am, and if you must keep one label, choose the only one that doesn't trap you. In progress. Number 9, the eternal observer. You solved suffering by stepping 1 inch to the left of your life. You found a balcony inside your skull and moved in. From there, above the heat and noise, you can watch everything. Anger flaring, doubt looping, longing pacing the room, and not be any of it. You call this awareness. Some days it is. Most days it's a velvet straitjacket, a refined way to never be caught being human. The pitch is irresistible. If you become the witness, you cannot be wounded. If you are the sky, clouds can darken but never stain you. Pain becomes weather, pleasure becomes weather. Your own name becomes weather. You breathe, label, let go. You are free from the tyranny of reactions and, little by little, free from the possibility of a life. At first, the balcony saves you. It gives you milliseconds between stimulus and slap, room enough to choose a kinder word. You catch yourself before you drive drunk on adrenaline. You de-escalate. The witness is a lifesaver, literally. Then the trick metastasizes. The part of you that fears being wrong, messy, needy, mortal, terrified, starts using observation like a silencer. You don't merely create space to choose, you outsource choosing to a view that never picks up a tool. Symptoms, if you dare to look through your own glass, you narrate instead of act. Anger is arising. Curiosity can be applied. By the time curiosity's paperwork clears, the moment that required a boundary has passed. Someone learns you are safe to ignore. You take notes. You anesthetize joy. When warmth floods your chest, you tag it pleasant sensation as if affection were a bee to be labeled before it stings. Now the bee hovers. It leaves. You congratulate yourself for avoiding attachment and miss the taste of honey. You mistake detachment for discernment. You stand above commitments because they generate friction. From up here, all paths look equal until you are asked to walk one. Your feet are out of practice. You treat intimacy like a lab. Your partner grieves, you monitor empathy metrics. Your friend rages, you practice holding space like a technician checking gauges. You are present the way a museum guard is present, attentive, silent, not allowed to touch. You convert apology into analysis. I observe defensiveness arising in a tone that makes "I'm sorry" unnecessary. The person in front of you doesn't need your insight. They need your knees to bend. There is a cruel elegance to the observer. It lets you keep your hands clean while calling it purity. It makes cowardice feel like clarity. It keeps you on speaking terms with every tribe because you never stand close enough to be counted. You are Switzerland of the soul, profitable in peace, ready to trade with anyone, allergic to flags. Ethically, the commute to the balcony is expensive. You begin to believe that interventions are contamination. Who am I to interfere, you whisper, as if moral agency were pollution rather than participation. A stranger is pushed. You witness your impulse to help with such skill that you never actually help. Interesting, you think, as the body hits the ground. The observer changes time. The past becomes an archive to be cataloged, stripped of its power to shame or soften you. The future becomes a series of weather reports, probabilities you can contemplate without packing a bag. The present is an aquarium you maintain. Clear glass, well lit, no fingerprints. You are the curator. The fish die often. You purchase more. Isn't witnessing the medicine you protest? It can be, but medicine at the wrong dose becomes poison. The witness was meant to be a tool for returning to the scene wiser, slower to harm, quicker to repair. The trap begins when the witness becomes a lifestyle. When you start believing that the most evolved stage of being is to hover, immaculate, just beyond involvement. The costs compound. Empathy dilution. Empathy requires a willingness to be affected, actually affected, not merely to register that effects are occurring. The observer keeps the effect at arm's length in the name of not merging. Over time, your nervous system loses range. You feel calm, like someone who can hear only bass notes. Agency atrophy. Choices pick up rust. You become a master of postponement, a virtuoso of non-commitment. You call it remaining open. In reality, you are gentrifying your life, painting over the graffiti of need and conflict until no one believes they are allowed to knock. Moral absenteeism. You avoid decisions that dirty you with trade-offs. The observer loves dilemmas in the abstract. It hates the moment where one good must be chosen over another, where one harm must be preferred because it wounds less. You prefer purgatory to blood. Identity vapor. The person who could be loved, the one with edges, is replaced by a neutral temperature that offends no one and moves nothing. People latch on and slide off. Some will say you are easy to be around. Many will leave without knowing why. They were hungry. You serve the idea of food. Aesthetic starvation. Art, which exists to grab you by the throat, is downgraded to interesting texture. Danger is relocated from the stage to your summary of the stage. You stop gasping. You become an excellent critic and a poor witness to beauty. The observer also colonizes language. You learn to speak as if you are describing weather patterns over a country you no longer inhabit. Attachment energy is present. Boundary confusion is happening. There's a contractive feel. Sentences without subjects. Verbs never resolve. You cannot be called to account because no one did anything. It all simply occurred. There is an eerie relief this posture sells. Unkillable self-respect. From the balcony, you cannot embarrass yourself. You cannot beg, blurt, bleed, plead, promise beyond your capacity. You cannot look like a fool for love. You cannot be heroic either. Heroes are people who allow themselves to be captured by a moment and decide to pay full price. The trap will recruit philosophy to defend itself. It will whisper about the self as illusion, about non-duality, about the suffering we cause by identification. It will wield spiritual truths like surgical gloves, sterile, disposable, insulating you from the warmth of flesh. It will point to sages. Remember, the sages returned to the marketplace. They chopped wood. They carried water. They laughed with their entire faces. If your non-attachment makes you colder than a monk who blesses vegetables with tears in his eyes, you've mistaken exit for enlightenment. How do you climb down without falling into reactivity's furnace? 1. Redefine witnessing as prelude, not position. The function of the witness is to earn you the right to act accurately. After observing, you must choose explicitly with verbs. Build a ritual. 3 breaths, a label, then a question that forces embodiment. What is mine to do? Followed by a visible behavior within 5 minutes if the situation is live, 5 days if it's long. 2. Install the 2-step apology. When harm happens, step 1, say the sentence with subject and verb, I hurt you. Step 2, add 1 concrete repair, I will do X by Tuesday. No meta-commentary until both steps are complete. The observer learns that accountability is not analysis, it is a door hinge. 3. Practice contact commitments. Daily, choose one interaction where you will permit yourself to be affected in real time without retreat to narration. A conversation with your mother, play with a child, making music with someone. Set the intention aloud. I will not step to the balcony during this hour. After, journal. During, remain. 4. Create action presets for recurring storms. If anger with your partner often leads you to the balcony, pre-decide a grounded response. When anger surges, I will say I need 5 minutes. Walk to the sink, run cold water, return, and make 1 request. The observer loses power when your body has a script that moves. 5. Use first-person, present-tense rules. Replace there is sadness with I am sad. Replace a boundary is being crossed with stop, I don't consent. Language drags the self back into the room like a bell. Keep ringing it until your spine remembers the way down. 6. Reintroduce stakes on purpose. Pick 3 commitments that can fail, witnessed by others. Publish a small essay, join a team with a deliverable, mentor a person who depends on your consistency. The observer loves private vows. Public ones educate your courage. 7. Practice clean yes, clean no. Once a day, say yes or no without padding. No probably, no let me see, no I'll try. The observer hides in hedges. Hedges are useful in complex negotiations, useless in the daily leaks where your life drains away. 8. Build a risk ladder. Many avoidant observers fear the binary, total enmeshment or total detachment. Construct rungs, a 10% risk, share a vulnerable sentence, a 30% risk, ask for help, a 60% risk, art with your name on it, an 80% risk, love without escape plan. Climb weekly. Rest sometimes. Keep going. 9. Let anger have a job. Properly harnessed, anger is the emotion that breaks the balcony's glass. Write rules. I don't weaponize it, but I let it power boundary sentences. Channel the heat into a phrase that lands. Do not speak to me like that. Your body will shake. Good. Shaking is the sound of the bridge reopening. 10. Make a sacred mess. Cook with friends and let the kitchen stay chaotic until the laughter is louder than your need for order. Paint without cleaning the brushes. Dance without naming the feeling. Once a week, do something your inner curator would not exhibit. Mess is intimacy's accent. 11. Rehearse rescue from witnessing. When bystanders freeze, it's often because they become observers of their own shock. Practice drills. Watch a staged conflict or imagine one and practice moving feet, opening mouth. Are you okay? Stop. I'm calling. Train your mouth to outrun the meta. 12. Keep a love ledger with verbs, not insights. Each night, who did you protect? Feed? Listen to? Forgive? Ask forgiveness from? A week of blank lines is not a moral indictment. It's a smoke detector. Do something small and hard the next morning. 13. Invite consequence back into the room. Pick one principle you will uphold at cost. Truthfulness, fidelity, hospitality, and name the cost you'll pay first when it bites. Embarrassment, money, status. When it bites, pay quickly. The observer loses its grip when you reacquaint yourself with prices paid on purpose. 14. Restore awe not as theory but as practice. Noticing is not awe. Awe interrupts. Go where you are too small. Mountains, birth wards, hospice, symphonies. Stay until you forget to narrate. Leave with one sentence that doesn't mention your awareness at all. Just thank you. 15. Institute witness fasts. For 1 hour a day, ban all inner commentary. Use tactile anchors to keep you in contact. Coins in your palm, cold glass, the scratch of a pen on paper. The point is not permanent muteness. It is muscular memory that you are allowed to be unobserved by yourself while you live. You will fear relapse into reactivity. Good. Keep the witness, trim it to the size of an instrument, not a habitat. Let it catch you before you escalate, then pass the baton to virtues that require temperature. Courage that says no, compassion that says come in, loyalty that says I stay, justice that puts its body where its mouth has been. A darker admonition, the marketplace loves eternal observers. They are excellent employees, calm under provocation, unflappable in crisis, interchangeable across teams. Movements love them too, always available, never scandalous, rarely on strike. You will be rewarded for your neutrality until you forget how neutrality becomes complicity. One day you will be asked to hold space for something that should be interrupted. You will be tempted to breathe. Don't. Break the spell with a sentence that risks your standing. When people who love you say, "Where were you?" do not point to the mezzanine inside your skull and say, "I was right there the whole time." They needed the version of you that carries boxes, that cries at the correct funeral, that says stay and then does. The balcony can watch the sunset. It cannot tuck a child in. Here is a vow that ends the trance without hating the medicine. I will use witnessing to widen my choices, and I will choose where someone can feel it. Say it out loud before the next conversation that scares you. Say it before you step into a room where your impulse is to float. Then let your feet argue with your fear by touching the floor. Tonight, when the observer offers its cool, perfect seat just beyond the reach of consequence, answer with a smaller bravery. Step down one stair. Let the voice in your chest be loud enough to embarrass your poise. Let your sentence be shorter than your analysis. Let your hands be in the scene where something breaks and something is repaired, and let the repair be yours enough that you cannot escape its price. That is how you become not merely someone who sees, but someone who lives. Number 10, the purity spiral. You want to be good, so you begin to clean. First your habits, then your desires, then your associations, then your thoughts. You shave your mistakes thinner until they are translucent, then declare war on their shadows. You call it integrity. Your friends call it high standards. Your body calls it hunger. Your life calls it missing. Purity has a sound, the click of the mind when everything lines up, the relief when no smudge remains. It's addictive because it feels like safety and sainthood at once. If you could just remove the last speck of compromise, the world might finally stop contaminating you. If you could finally sand down the motives, format the words, disinfect the loyalties, you could walk through fire without smelling like smoke. And so, you start to live like a flame hates oxygen, by consuming what keeps it alive. The spiral starts modestly. I won't lie. Then it widens. I won't say anything that could be misinterpreted as a lie. Then, I won't speak unless I can guarantee the truth will land perfectly. Soon, the only honest sentence left is your silence. You call this rigor. It is rigor mortis with immaculate manners. Purity promises three seductions: clarity, power, absolution. Clarity, no gray, therefore no guilt. Power, no compromise, therefore no leverage on you. Absolution, no participation in the world's grime, therefore no complicity. Each seduction is half true and fully ruinous. Clarity without texture is blindness. Power without contact is impotence. Absolution without repair is theater. You learn techniques, you scrub language until it squeaks. You cull friends who mix your clean categories with their muddy lives. You invent taboos around everything that once felt human: pleasure, anger, need, because they stain too easily. You call this maturing. You have simply bleached the laundry of your soul so often the fabric is thinning. Symptoms, if you dare to hold them up to light. Contamination anxiety. You avoid good work because imperfect people are doing it. You would rather do nothing purely than something amid mixed motives. You forget that every rescue is done with dirty hands. The ascetic gaze. You scan for blemishes like a customs agent. Admiration lasts until you spot the flaw that proves a person doesn't deserve your trust. You call this discernment. It is a diet where you starve on principle. Edge case tyranny. If a rule fails once, it must be bad. If a person fails once, they must be false. Your standards punish the exception and then generalize the punishment. You call this consistency. It is cruelty in a uniform. Moral bulimia. Periods of perfect control followed by secret binges of the very pleasures you banned. Then shame. Then tighter control. You think purity failed because you weren't pure enough. What failed was the fantasy that humans are made of glass. Grammar laundering. I don't associate with negativity replaces I left you when you were inconvenient. I don't consume problematic art replaces I won't let anything touch me that would require explaining. You rename fear as holiness. Goalpost drift. The moment you achieve a standard, the standard shifts 1 inch farther. Your perfectionism is a treadmill that runs on gratitude you refuse to feel. Thin joy. You only permit pleasures you can cite footnotes for. Spontaneous delight feels suspicious. You confuse clean living with good living and end up with a white, empty plate and a table full of rules. The spiral doesn't only shrink you, it weaponizes you. Purity becomes a lens you aim outward. You curate social circles by sterilization. One error and people are biohazards. You cancel not because harm must be confronted, but because expulsion lets you keep your own mirror spotless. You demand public confessions formatted to your orthodoxy. You call it accountability while you harvest the ecstasy of exile. Institutions adore your spiral. You are easy to brand. No mess, no scandals, no inconvenient friendships. Movements recruit you to police boundaries. Religions reward you with titles like upright, devout, principled. You become the person who is never wrong because you never risk the arena where wrongness teaches. You are promoted precisely because you cannot be surprised. Costs accrue, compound, and collect interest. 1. Compassion anemia. Compassion is the capacity to stay near what isn't clean and still love it into repair. The spiral teaches you to withdraw precisely where compassion is required. You love concepts of people. People leak. 2. Agency distortion. Purity mistakes refusal for strength. You say no so often that no becomes an identity. Eventually, you cannot say yes to things that matter because yes invites contamination by reality, and reality nicks. 3. Truth without mercy. You will say true things with a temperature that freezes them into weapons. Truth without a warm hand is a blade. Truth with a warm hand is a suture. You prefer knives because they make you feel sharp. 4. Moral myopia. Obsessing over micro blemishes blinds you to macro evils. You will loathe a colleague's clumsy phrasing and miss your employer's quiet exploitation. Polishing the teacup while the house burns feels virtuous. It is vanity on fire. 5. Self-hatred in drag. The spiral pretends it is about your love of the good. Often it is about your disgust at the unmanageable human animal you are. Your sweat, your desire, your history that won't scrub off. You call it standards. Your body feels it as rejection. 6. Creative sterility. Creation is pollutive by design. Drafts, iterations, wrong turns, inks that stain the fingers. You cultivate an aesthetic of clean lines and produce artifacts that never bled. Adorable. Forgettable. 7. Community fragility. Communities built on purity fracture at their first stain. No mechanism for repair means schism is the only sacrament. You learn the choreography of exile and forget the choreography of return. The spiral also corrupts your time. You spend your days in preemptive damage control rather than in constructive labor. You treat tomorrow like a tribunal. You collect receipts for your righteousness and file them in a cabinet labeled, "in case they come." They do come. Loneliness, numbness, the quiet verdict that you have kept yourself safe at the price of being worth nothing to anyone who bleeds. But isn't purity a virtue? You protest. Yes, when it means clean intention, honest speech, a refusal to sell your soul for applause. The indictment is narrower. You mistook purification, an ongoing practice, for purity, a static state. You built a glass house and called it a temple, then forgot that temples are for sacrifices that stain stone. How to descend from the spiral without collapsing into sludge? 1. Replace purity with fidelity. Purity asks, am I untainted? Fidelity asks, am I faithful to what I vowed when things are messy? Write 3 vows small enough to keep. Tell the truth even when I blush. Protect the weaker in the room. Repair what I break. Fidelity survives stains. Purity shatters at a fingerprint. 2. Adopt the 95-5 rule of holiness. Hold 95% standards that guide you, and keep a 5% mercy override for situations where the standard harms the purpose. Protect, heal, feed, free. The override must be named, documented, and tied to purpose. This converts exceptions from favoritism into disciplined humanity. 3. Build a grace budget. Time and money set aside each month for unqualified kindness that does not pass your usual purity tests. Messy relatives, imperfect charities, art by flawed people that still nourishes your soul. The budget inoculates you against the reflex to exile anything with mixed motives, which is everything. 4. Create contamination practice. Once a week, do a small good with dirty hands. Help someone you disapprove of in a concrete way. Eat with someone whose politics feel like sandpaper. Volunteer where your protocols will be ignored by the tide of need. Log what actually happened versus what you feared. Purity terrifies you with hypotheticals. Reality is specific and less dramatic. 5. Install repair rituals for when you or they fail. A 3-step script. Name the harm plainly, make a concrete amends, agree on a behavior change with a date. Ban self-flagellation, ban absolution without amends. Rituals make return more likely than exile. 6. Maintain a compromise ledger with conscience. Not all compromise corruption. Write down choices where you accepted a blemish to protect a greater good. Beside each, record the principle you defended. Review monthly with a trusted witness. If your ledger is empty, you're either a saint or a coward. Odds are against sainthood. 7. Practice dirty joy. Choose pleasures that can't be sterilized. Cooking that splatters, dancing badly, hiking until sweat salts your lips. Pleasure teaches your nervous system that aliveness is not a moral error. Ban apologies while enjoying. 8. Reframe consistency as coherence within time. You are allowed to change your mind as you learn. Write the conditions that would change your standard before the moment arrives. When they do, change in public. Purity treats updates as betrayal. Coherence names them growth. 9. Use the shadow KPI. For every virtue you track, honesty, discipline, rigor, track its shadow cost, rigidity, harshness, brittleness. If the shadow rises, adjust. Metrics can keep your zeal from eating its own tail. 10. Practice edge hospitality. Invite into your life one person, book, or community that violates your cleanliness in a way you can survive. The goal is not to be converted. It is to decolonize your empathy so it can work amid dirt. Hospitality is how you learn the difference between tolerance and contact. 11. Write a no banishment clause. People can return. Specify how. Apology, amends, changed behavior for N days. If your system can only eject and never reconcile, it isn't moral, it's brittle. Justice without pathways home is theater with knives. 12. Install confession without spectacle. When you fail, confess to those harmed, not to the crowd. Repair in proportion to the harm, not to your shame. Public self-immolation is another kind of purity ritual. It cleanses nothing. It performs cleanliness for applause. 13. Relearn hierarchies of value. Not every impurity is equal. Rank harms by impact, intent, and reversibility. Treat a clumsy phrase differently from a cruel pattern. If you punish everything maximally, nothing means anything and everyone hides. 14. Keep elders of nuance. 3 people, alive or dead, whose writing or presence remind you that goodness lives in gradients. A nurse who broke a rule to save a life, a poet who loved a flawed city without lying about it, a leader who apologized and stayed. Read them when your hands itch to eject. 15. Practice blessing what you cannot fix. Some stains are not for you to scrub. Blessing is not approval. It is the refusal to let loathing harden your face. Speak a quiet, honest good over a person you cannot keep close. Purity thinks distance requires contempt. It doesn't. 16. Say good enough to love out loud. About your partner's imperfect apology, your team's flawed launch, your own tangled progress. The sentence does not lower standards. It sets them where love can reach them. There's a fear under all this cleaning. If you stop, the dirt will win. The truth is less dramatic and more frightening. If you stop, you will have to feel. Feel the risk of trusting someone who might fail you. Feel the embarrassment of enjoying something impure. Feel the grief of being implicated in systems you didn't build and still benefit from. Feeling is not the enemy. Feeling is the solvent that thins the shell so your virtues can breathe. A darker warning. Purity movements always eat their children. Today you excommunicate the ugly outside. Tomorrow you start amputating the merely imperfect within. By next year, your own heartbeat is suspicious. You will look around and find yourself beautifully alone, defended by standards that never touch anything worth defending. So keep one clean thing, your purpose. Protect, heal, free, feed, build, reconcile. Let every standard submit to that end. If a rule starves the purpose, revise the rule. If a friendship threatens it, rework the friendship. If your self-image demands a sacrifice, the purpose does not. Burn the image. That is purity worth the name. Single-heartedness about the good, tolerant of the grime required to reach it. When the spiral whispers tonight, be cleaner or be nothing, answer with the sentence that ends the trance. I will be faithful, not flawless. Then do something that betrays the idol of purity while serving the truth. Eat with the imperfect. Apologize without theater. Build where the ground is muddy. Love someone who is still learning how. Touch the world with ungloved hands and then wash them, not because you fear dirt, but because you intend to return. Number 11, the crowned nihilist. You found a throne no one can topple. Nothing matters. You wear the crown because it is lighter than a promise. It looks like wisdom from a distance, cool, impervious, unseduced. Up close, it's a scorched halo. You burned meanings so they couldn't burn you first. The move is elegant. Meaning is expensive. Risk, responsibility, grief at the checkout. So you short the market. You declare value a hoax and collect the interest of never being disappointed. If everything is empty, you say, then nothing binds me. You call this freedom. Mostly it is insulation. Mostly it is a way to keep your hands clean while the world keeps asking for fingerprints. The crowned nihilist is not the philosopher who stares into the abyss and refuses to lie. It's the tactician who uses the abyss as a tool. When duty knocks, you point at the void. When love asks for a vow, you cite cosmic heat death. When conscience stings, you anesthetize it with cosmology. You turn the size of the universe into an alibi for the size of your life. At first, the coronation feels like relief. The pressure drops. Grades ambitions, reputations, rituals, paper scenery on a stage you can walk off whenever you like. You stop losing sleep over losses. You pre-lose everything. You stop getting fooled by hope. You pre-disbelieve. You think you have outgrown the playground. Actually, you cut the power to the lights and called it night. Symptoms, if you're brave enough to audit the palace. Irony as armor. You speak in italics and quotation marks. Sincerity embarrasses you like an outdated outfit. Every declaration gets inverted before it can touch you. Moral anesthesia. You describe cruelty with the same tone you use for weather. People do things. Your verbs don't bend under weight. Choice paralysis with swagger. It's all the same in the end. You call it non-attachment. It's the inability or refusal to rank goods. Pleasure without gratitude. You gorge, then call enjoyment neural fireworks. You won't say thank you because to whom? The kick is good, the posture is hollow. Cruelty disguised as clarity. You puncture other people's hopes to prove you're not naive. You call it saving them time. Mostly you're laundering your loneliness into advice. Apocalypse gambling. You bet your future on the odds that nothing matters enough to hold you accountable. You are rarely present where consequences can find you. The crown changes language. So what? Becomes a reflex. Whatever becomes a worldview. You use meaning like a slur. When pressed, you smuggle in borrowed values, authenticity, no hypocrisy, no harm, then deny that these are meanings because you didn't buy them at a church. You live on stolen oxygen while mocking lungs. There's a narcotic pleasure here, superiority by subtraction. Believers look earnest, you look safe. Builders look foolish, you look finished. Lovers look hostage, you look sovereign. You win every argument by refusing to stand anywhere. Undefeated, you wonder why your victories taste like dust. The costs arrive like slow radiation. 1. Cowardice in costume. You present your refusal to commit as intellectual hygiene. It is often fear of grief with a vocabulary. You can't be betrayed if you never kneel. You also can't be chosen. 2. Ethical myopia. If nothing matters more. You lose the fine motor skill that moral life requires, ranking harms, honoring trade-offs, paying prices on purpose. Who cares becomes a knife you misplace and sit on later. 3. Aesthetic starvation. Beauty exists to arrest you. You train yourself to pass every arrest warrant through a metal detector of cleverness. Nothing stops you. Nothing moves you. 4. Community erosion. People can't trust a sovereign who will not be bound. They'll admire your wit and hide their children from your influence. You'll be invited to panels, not kitchens. 5. Temporal flattening. If all arcs end at 0, you stop differentiating Tuesday from a vow, a promise from a plan. Time stops maturing you. You become an old child with elegant reasons. 6. Self-contempt with good posture. You cannot respect a person you will not allow to care. Eventually, the mirror tells the truth. You won't. This isn't depth. It retreat. The crowned nihilist also distorts opposition. If someone argues that meaning is built, you call them sentimental. If someone argues that meaning is discovered, you call them deluded. If someone refuses your binary, you call them confused. The game is to make certainty the only price at which you will purchase value and then pretend the store is closed. Let's make a clean distinction before we proceed. There is an honest nihilism that refuses counterfeit purpose. Flags sold as gods, markets sold as morals, slogans sold as salvation. It is a disinfectant. Keep it. The trap is when disinfectant becomes a diet. You cannot live on bleach. What would it mean to dethrone the crown without crawling back to easy lies? Not to pretend the cosmos cares. Not to invent a scoreboard in the sky. To act as if values can be grown, kept, and tested in public. To treat meaning as a verb, built under heat, measured by consequence, revised by pain. To replace absolutes with fidelity and abstraction with stakes. Here's how you begin. Practices that feel embarrassingly small compared to the void, which is why they work. 1. Write a covenant, not a creed. Creeds answer the universe. Covenants bind you to us. 1 page, present tense, no metaphysics. I will protect X. I will refuse Y. I will spend Z hours monthly on A. I will tell the truth when it costs me B. Post it where people who know you can read it. Meaning begins where someone can check. 2. Install a care hierarchy before the crisis. Rank 5 goods you will protect in order, e.g., dignity over efficiency, honesty over popularity, the vulnerable over the comfortable, repair over performance, learning over pride. When dilemmas arrive, pay the price that your hierarchy predicts. Review quarterly. Update in public if you must. Grown meanings change. Evasive meanings blur. 3. Keep a consequence ledger. Anytime you say it doesn't matter, write the concrete harms or goods that followed, not acting. Names, not vibes. Over months, you'll relearn moral sensation by evidence, not mood. 4. Practice small, irreversible commitments. Not marriage to a mountain. Start with streetlight vows. Mentor 1 kid for a year. Fund 1 bed monthly. Publish 1 piece with your real name. Show up at the same table every Wednesday. Irreversibility is how muscle remembers that matter is a weight-bearing word. 5. Set no sneer hours. 2 hours a day where sarcasm is banned. Speak in declaratives. Ask for what you want without quotation marks. If you can't, your crown is fused to your skull. Sweat gently until the weld softens. 6. Build a joy discipline. Schedule gratuitous, embodied delights you cannot explain without sounding unserious. Peaches over the sink, cheap fireworks, a choir, bad dancing, a dog park. Gratitude is contraband in your palace. Smuggle it in until you're brave enough to call it policy. 7. Run face-first audits. Once a month, help someone where your help is visible to you. Carry the boxes, sit the vigil, scrub the dishes after the meeting whose agenda you mocked. Keep a list of the names, not the takes. Cynicism melts slower when it is looking at a person. 8. Apply the one-way door rule. When choices are reversible, move fast and learn. When they're not, slow down and honor the cost. Nihilism flattens all doors. Grown meaning reinstalls hinges. 9. Practice public repair. When you harm, apologize with verbs. Name what you did, state what you'll change, put a date on it. Do not explain meaning, make it out of your mouth and hands. Nothing dislodges the crown like paying a price in daylight. 10. Adopt awe as hygiene. Awe is not a theory, it's a practice of proportion. Go where your cleverness cannot hold the room. Hospice, mountains, labor wards, rehabilitation centers, frontline shelters, symphonies. Stay until your first instinct is not to comment. Leave one sentence behind that contains no irony. 11. Establish a promise economy. Trade private cynicism for small, reliable promises. Be the person whose "I'll be there at 7" recalibrates someone's belief in humans by 0.3%. Your crown measures only grand claims. Life is built by tiny interest payments on kept words. 12. Create a risk ladder. List 4 exposures, 10%, 30%, 60%, 80%. Populate each with an action you can take this month that may fail and will matter if it does. Climb weekly. Crowned heads avoid stairs. 13. Use the good enough to defend test. Before you mock a project, ask, could I defend a weaker, workable version of this to someone I respect? If yes, offer to help build it at that level. If not, remain silent for 24 hours. You're weaning off the drug of cheap superiority. 14. Keep elders of grit on a shelf. Writers, workers, organizers whose sentences aren't clean but whose lives carried freight. Read them when your perfectionism is trying to turn effort into a joke. Grit is how value gets traction. 15. Install sacred refusals. If you're afraid of becoming a gullible zealot, write lines you won't cross. I won't lie for the cause. I won't humiliate to win. I won't call despair truthfulness. Refusal is not nihilism. It's a fence around a garden you intend to tend. There's a counter voice already drafting its rebuttal. Isn't all this just pretending? If meaning isn't metaphysically guaranteed, aren't we play acting? Yes, like carpenters pretend houses into existence by measuring wood against weather and need. Call it pretending if you like. The family inside calls it shelter. The dethroning will feel like embarrassment at first. You will hear yourself say a sentence with heat. I love this, I'm staying, that's wrong, we'll fix it. And your inner monarch will cringe at the lack of philosophical caveats. Good. You are trading invulnerability for influence. You are re-entering a world where words bruise and heal. Expect relapses. On nights when hope tastes saccharine, the crown will glitter. It will remind you of the elegance of despair, the aesthetic of exit, the applause of clever cruelty. Put the crown down like a drink that makes you worse at love. Go do one stupidly decent act before bed. Send the message, give the money, wash the bowls, cancel the petty subtweet, prepare the thing someone else is dreading. The act won't solve the cosmos, it will solve your night. A darker warning, institutions hire crowned nihilists as brand armor. You're unshockable, unflappable, unwilling to blow whistles because whistles imply a game worth saving. You will rise quickly and be left out of rooms where meaning is decided because you have pre-announced you won't bleed for any of it. That's the final irony. The throne is portable, and it gets you nowhere worth staying. Keep one sentence ready for the moments your old eloquence gathers to perform its coronation ritual. I choose to matter here. Not everywhere, not forever, not cosmically. Here. Say it where a person can hear you and then test it against friction. Meaning is not a property of the universe you're trying to coerce into confession. It is a property of a will trained to bind itself to the good within reach. A brief workman's prayer to close the ceremony. May my cleverness never outrun my courage. May my hunger for safety never exceed my hunger to serve. May I crown not my despair but my fidelity, and only with a sweat-stained hat. Then stand where you are slightly afraid. Pick one thing you would be ashamed to call nothing, and pay for it like a person who intends to keep paying while breath is in the account. Number 12, the suffering economy. You discovered a currency that never runs out, pain. You can mint it from memory, compound it with attention, invest it in allegiance, spend it on absolution. You can short other people's joy. You can hedge against responsibility with a story of harm. And the market always buys, because the price of suffering once posted intimidates anyone from haggling. At first, it felt honest. You stopped pretending you were fine. You named losses that used to rot in silence. People gathered. They nodded, cried, brought tea. Your pain purchased presence, and presence is rare. Then the rate changed. Attention began to drift unless you raised the stakes. Your story had to be sharper, darker, nearer to the bone. Somewhere between confession and leverage, you opened a shop. Welcome to the suffering economy, where wounds are capital and debt is paid in pity. The logic is tidy. Herd confers authority. Who else should define the rules but those scorched by the old ones? Herd confers innocence. If I'm bleeding, I cannot be blamed. Herd confers urgency. Now becomes a siren. So you collect hurt the way others collect credentials. You lay it on the table before disagreements like a badge. And when someone disagrees with your conclusions while honoring your pain, it feels like fraud. In an economy, to question the price is to insult the goods. Listen to how the trap installs itself. Suffering becomes proof of truth. The deeper the wound, the truer the claim. Evidence starts to feel disrespectful. Counterexamples look cruel. Suffering becomes collateral. You loan your loyalty to anyone who validates your pain and call their interest solidarity. When they cash in, you feel obligated. Suffering becomes leverage. You learn the sentence that ends negotiations. As someone who has been through X, the room goes quiet and you get your way. Suffering becomes identity. Healing feels like liquidation. If the wound closes, what will you spend? So you protect the wound. You call it vigilance. It is guarding a vault. Symptoms: if you dare to audit your books, you preface requests with your worst chapter because you fear a clean ask will be refused. You treat kindness as payment and keep a running tally. Gratitude shrivels. Collection thrives. You distrust your own joy and sabotage it. Joy threatens your credit rating. You police others' comfort. Their flourishing feels like theft from your account. You refuse repair that lacks ceremony. If the offender fixes the leak without kneeling, you're robbed of interest. You optimize for visible harm. Invisible good work bores you. Spectacular wrongs feed you. You wear exhaustion as evidence. Rest looks like embezzlement. You work until you can display the bruise. Notice the market dynamics. Supply. Everyone hurts. A surplus floods the square. The only way to stand out is to intensify, aestheticize, or monetize the hurt. Demand. Algorithms, institutions, and tribes reward spectacle and moral clarity. Nuance is expensive. Outrage is cheap. The feed pays cash for flames. Inflation. Yesterday's pain no longer purchases today's attention. You must escalate disclosure, dramatize interpretation, or find fresh injury. Moral hazard. When harm pays, remaining harmed becomes rational. Help becomes threatening. If I heal, I lose leverage. If you heal, I lose my identity's mirror. Arbitrage. Convert private anguish into public status. Convert public status into immunity from critique. Convert immunity into power. Somewhere, quietly, someone bleeds who never learned to sell it. They lose. There are other ledgers at work. The victimhood index, whose story carries the room. The martyr metric, who works the longest without asking for pay. The trauma futures market, betting that your past will keep yielding dividends if you water it with a steady stream of reminders. We don't call them by these names. We call them care, culture, ethics. But the prices expose us. Costs accrue, slowly, then all at once. 1. Healing disincentive. If your wound is your credential, closure feels like unemployment. You will delay therapy, reject unceremonious repair, and curate triggers, anything to keep the store open. 2. Compassion bankruptcy. When every interaction is a transaction, empathy becomes currency you hoard or spend manipulatively. Real care, free, wasteful, unscheduled, atrophies. 3. Cynicism as default. You start suspecting every apology, every philanthropic act, every celebration as PR. Even your own goodness looks like branding in a mirror you don't trust. 4. Community fragility. Groups built on grievance fracture into submarkets. Pain Olympics begin. Who suffered most recently, most publicly. Cooperation dies where comparison rules. 5. Moral distortion. Harm becomes a trump card that outranks truth. You can be cruel and call it self-protection, dishonest and call it my narrative, unjust and call it historical balance. 6. Self-cruelty. You keep reopening old cuts to refresh the proof. You rehearse worst nights nightly. Your nervous system never gets to downshift. Hypervigilance becomes home. 7. Creative sterility. New work requires risk and play. The economy punishes play as frivolity. You become a curator of your ache, not a builder of your future. There is a darker engine. The suffering economy offers a way to skip the humiliating labor of moral growth. It swaps sacrifice, paying costs to serve a good beyond yourself, for suffering as spectacle, charging others for your pain. Sacrifice produces repair, spectacle produces rent. None of this denies real harm. Pain deserves a hearing. Justice requires stories. The indictment is narrower. You turn testimony into tender, grief into governance, anguish into authorization for whatever you wanted next. You started charging interest on the worst day of your life. What breaks the market without cheapening the truth? Not silence. Not get over it. Not shaming people back into stoicism. The way out is to change the terms of trade, move from pain as currency to pain as commitment, from ledger to labor, from merit by injury to merit by repair. Practices: unromantic, audited, unsellable. 1. Close the books. Ban accounting language from relationships for 30 days. No, after all I've been through. No, you owe me. No, I paid for this. Replace with plain requests and boundaries. I need X. I will not accept Y. If you can't ask clean, you're still trading. 2. Sign a healing contract with dates. Name the wound. Name what help you'll accept. Name markers of progress, sleep, triggers, capacity. Name a review date. Healing without time horizons breeds forever counts. Contracts are not cages, they're exits. 3. Shift from wound identity to scar identity. A wound demands attention, a scar remembers without bleeding. Tell the story in past tense unless safety requires present. Add the build line after the bruise line. This happened. Here's what I'm building so it buys less of me tomorrow. 4. Install repair receipts. Every time your pain authorizes a demand, pair it with a labor that heals the scene. Fix the policy, clean the mess, mentor the next you, fund the help you wish you had. Receipts turn rent-seeking into repair-seeking. 5. Create a mercy budget with no strings. Money time set aside monthly to help where the ask comes, without narrative vetting or public posting. This starves the part of you that needs the market to witness your compassion before it counts. 6. Abolish martyr metrics. Replace hours offered with outcomes improved. Celebrate rest that sustains action. Institute a Sabbath from discourse where your value isn't recited. Exhaustion is not evidence. 7. Run a doom diet. Cap daily intake of misery media. For every unit consumed, log 1 unit of concrete help. If you can't convert consumption into action, don't call it care. It's entertainment with darker lighting. 8. Adopt the tonight rule. When tempted to post pain for leverage, ask what reduces harm by tonight. Do that first. Post after, if needed, and include what worked. Turn the spotlight into a work light. 9. Install gratitude leaks. Keep a small private ledger of gifts received that you will not balance. Unrepaid good is terrifying to the economy. Let it terrify you until it softens you. 10. Ban pain escalation in argument. If stakes rise, switch from who hurt more to what helps now. Write this rule on your wall. Pain comparison is a cul-de-sac with good acoustics. 11. Build a competence bank. For every wound you can name on command, name a skill you are growing that serves others apart from your pain. Update monthly. Withdraw competence in public. Deposit pain in therapy and trusted circles. 12. Practice quiet repair. Fix 3 things no one can credit you for. Trash, dishes, code comments, the sentence that makes policy kinder. The economy cannot price what it cannot see. Practice adding value invisibly until you no longer need the receipt to believe you did. 13. Write a no-leverage clause. I will not use my suffering to excuse cruelty, avoid accountability, or preempt evidence. Post it where your allies can quote it back. 14. Establish reconciliation pathways. In your community, codify how people return after harm. Name, amends, probation, re-entry. Economies of suffering prefer permanent banishment. Justice prefers repaired membership. 15. Apologize for weaponized pain. Not, I'm sorry you didn't understand it. I used my hurt to force you. I owe you a clean ask. Here it is. Do it once and feel the air change. 16. Rehearse dirty joy. Schedule pleasures that stain your hands. Cooking that splatters, paint that won't come off in one wash, laughter that cracks mascara. Joy thickens your immune system against the flu of perpetual grievance. 17. Switch from performing harm to teaching skill. If your story matters, teach the coping you paid for in blood. Give away the tools. The market prefers tears. Apprentices prefer techniques. Choose apprentices. 18. Track net suffering reduced. When you intervene, note the concrete delta. Safer shift, faster access, fewer panics, clearer policy. Publish those numbers, not your nights. Metrics don't replace mercy, they prune theater. 19. Institute mutuality covenants. With close people, write reciprocal promises. We will not invoice each other for care. We will ask plainly. We will fight fair. We will rest before we punish. Sign it laughing. Enforce it tired. 20. Keep elders of scarred joy on your shelf. People who bled and then built, nurses who changed protocols, organizers who negotiated peace, artists who turned grief into bread. Read them when you're tempted to sell the wound again. There's a fear under all this. If you stop trading, you'll be invisible. If you heal, you'll be powerless. If you forgive, you'll be fooled. If you rest, you'll be replaced. Some of that will happen. You will lose market share. You will lose the sick thrill of leverage. You will gain something sturdier, authority earned by repair, tenderness that doesn't invoice, joy that doesn't require an audience, a face your future can trust. A warning before we close: institutions adore the suffering economy. It is predictable, monetizable, and distracting. They will rent your pain as a brand, platform your outrage, and quietly resist your repairs. Keep your aim on the unglamorous fix. If you must choose, disappoint the feed, not the person bleeding. Here is the vow that ends the trade without denying the truth. My suffering is evidence, not currency. A teacher, not a weapon. A beginning, not a throne. Say it aloud before you tell the story again. Then do one unspectacular thing that reduces pain by tonight, yours or someone else's, without posting the receipt. Let that be the first deposit in a different economy, where the only interest that compounds is trust. Number 13, freedom as escape hatch. You worship the open door, not because there's anything on the other side, but because it's open. You feel smart when you keep your options alive, powerful when you never say yes without a backspace key, safe when nothing can require you. You call this freedom. Most days it's a trapdoor you stand on and call a balcony. The pitch is everywhere. Never commit when you can compare, never land when you can hover, never buy when you can trial, never love when you can text, never choose a path when you can brand yourself as multi-hyphenate possibility. Optionality is sold like oxygen, but oxygen isn't a life. It's what a life burns while doing something definite. The escape hatch feels rational. You've seen promises become cages. You've watched careers harden into ruts, marriages ossify into courtrooms, faiths turn into forts. So you decide to stay frictionless. You will always be able to leave. You will be the one untrappable. You will not die in a cul-de-sac because you never enter streets. It works until it empties you. Because freedom as escape is just sophisticated running. Running preserves motion and forfeits arrival. Listen for the telltale behaviors. You keep relationships in the almost zone, warm enough to harvest comfort, cool enough to exit without alimony of conscience. You hoard alternatives until the best one rots. You call it due diligence. Decision is deferred into an identity, a curator of roads not taken. Your calendar is full of tentatives. Your sentences are full of "we'll see." Your life is full of people who don't know if they can count on you, and eventually they don't. You fetishize reversible choices. Two-way doors only, you say, until the doors wear out from opening and closing to nowhere. You are allergic to nouns that bind. Promise, vow, oath, home, team, craft. You prefer verbs that evaporate, exploring, considering, vibing, keeping it open. You confuse "I could" with "I am." You own 10 instruments and play none beyond frustration. You learn the first 20% of every skill and call yourself a student of life. Life calls you a tourist with excellent luggage. The escape hatch rewires your tongue. You speak in hedges and fog, maybe, probably, for now, low-key, kind of, down to, might be down to, checking vibes, no labels. Your language keeps you from perjury. It also keeps you from witness. Nobody can quote you because you never said anything that could be held. It also distorts your ethics. Commitment is how responsibility binds itself to time. Without it, the future is always someone else's problem. You don't lie, you just never become someone a lie could betray. There are pleasures here, the thrill of exit, the superiority of the chooser who is never chosen. The romance of potential, cleaner than reality because reality leaks. The dopamine of maybe there's a better thing which requires no work, only scrolling. Freedom becomes an aesthetic. White space, modernist furniture, the room where nothing is in the way because there is nothing. Costs arrive with polite shoes before they kick in the door. 1. Thinness. Without commitments, experiences slide off you. There's no roughness for meaning to catch on. You travel everywhere and are changed by nothing. You meet everyone and are known by no one. Your life is a tasting menu that never becomes a meal. 2. Trust deficit. People don't ask you for the hard thing because they know you won't stay when the hard thing bites. You become excellent company for low stakes, absent when stakes grow teeth. You wonder why opportunities that require faith never knock. 3. Mastery, malnutrition. Depth demands repetition and boredom. Optionality hates both, so you remain a collector of beginnings. Your competence plateaus at promising. You protect your promise by never cashing it in. 4. Decision rot. Choices left in the sun spoil. Delay hardens into drift. You don't choose, entropy chooses. Later you call it fate and feel philosophical. It was cowardice with good PR. 5. Self-respect erosion. You cannot respect a person you never require. When nothing owns you, nothing can rely on you. The mirror keeps the bill. 6. Love without weight. Intimacy asks to be preferred. Attachment asks to be bound. You replace both with a choreography of plausible deniability. You exit clean. You remain empty. 7. Political anemia. Citizenship is commitments at scale. People who won't commit make excellent consumers and poor neighbors. Your neighborhood learns your schedule but cannot rely on your spine. 8. Temporal sameness. Without vows, Tuesday is indistinguishable from any other day. Ritual collapses into impulse. You experience time like a playlist on shuffle. Novel, never narrative. 9. Moral drift. Without anchor principles that bind you even when you'd rather not, convenient values step in. You become as ethical as your mood and as principled as your fears. The mythology behind the hatch is simple. Freedom equals fewer constraints. Forget the other mathematics. Freedom equals greater capacities, and capacities are built by constraints well chosen. A violin with no strings is free of tension and incapable of song. Notice how the marketplace conspires with the hatch. Subscriptions, trials, stepaways, gig work, swipe culture, everything optimized for low friction and perpetual comparison. Your dopamine learns to expect exits. You become a person for whom effort feels like insult and permanence feels like trap. Meanwhile, the people who choose build worlds that hire you and fire you, and you call them lucky. But isn't freedom a virtue? Yes, when it is the space in which you choose a binding worth your life. The trap is when freedom becomes a religion whose only sacrament is leaving. How do you relearn freedom as the power to keep instead of the right to flee? Not by entering cages, not by romance with suffering for its own sake. By building chosen constraints that turn your energy into work, your work into skill, your skill into gifts, your gifts into belonging. By installing doors that close because you walk through them, not because someone slammed them. A field guide, not for grand gestures, but for the daily mechanics of a life that means something. 1. Redefine freedom as capacity under vow. Write it on a page you see daily. Freedom is my ability to bind myself to goods I choose, and to keep choosing when it hurts. If your definition of freedom never mentions pain, it describes adolescence. 2. Build a commitment ladder. 4 rungs, 10%, 30%, 60%, 90%. Populate them this month. 10%, attend the same class weekly. Ship 1 page every day, weekly dinner with a neighbor. 30%, join a team with a quarterly deliverable, mentor someone for a semester. 60%, 2-year craft apprenticeship, start therapy and stick through the awkward middle. 90%, a vow with your name on it. Marriage, founding, guardianship, a charter for a work that will outlive your stamina. Climb deliberately. Don't pretend the top exists if your feet never leave rung 1. 3. Time box optionality. Set option expiry dates. I will explore alternatives for 14 days, then decide by Friday 17. Put a friend on the calendar to witness the decision. The hatch hates clocks. Introduce one. 4. Use the one-way, two-way door rule honestly. Most choices are reversible. Decide fast, learn in motion. Reserve long deliberation for the few doors that shut behind you. Children's surgery, criminal acts, burning bridges you'll need. Optionality addicts reverse this. Procrastinate on reversible choices. Improvise on irreversible ones. Fix the inversion. 5. Keep a promise ledger with receipts. Each night, 3 kept promises, no matter how small, called when I said delivered when due, showed up at 7, paid the bill, apologized today not sometime, wrote page 1, lifted for 20 minutes. A year of this ledger is an autobiography other people can touch. 6. Run decision thresholds. Before analyzing, preset your bar. For this choice, I move at 70% confidence or by date X. When either arrives, move. This prevents the endless just one more data point drift that turns freedom into a spreadsheet hobby. 7. Install sacred yes, sacred no. Choose 2 non-negotiable yeses, e.g. tell the truth, protect the vulnerable, and 2 non-negotiable nos, e.g. no lies for advantage, no ghosting. Post them. When tired, submit to them. Commitment is cognitive offloading, your better self rented space in your wall. 8. Draft covenants, not contracts. Contracts trade value. Covenants bind identity to care. Write one for your partner, your team, your craft. Include repair clauses, how we apologize, how we return after failure, how we ask for relief. Publish it where the people it binds can hold you to it. 9. Maintain anchor projects. Always have one long thing that will be slightly embarrassing if you quit. A book with chapter deadlines and early readers, a language with public check-ins, a neighborhood initiative with names on the list. Anchor projects give your weeks gravity. They make no easier because something already owns your time. 10. Practice presence windows, daily blocks where you deliberately remove exits. Phone off, door closed, one task only. Presence breeds affection. Affection breeds commitment. Without presence, nothing earns your loyalty because nothing has met you fully. 11. Create a clean exit protocol. Commitment is not imprisonment. Write how you leave when you must. Notice given, handover prepared, gratitude expressed, amends offered, door kept ajar without ambiguity. The hatch thrives on messy exits that justify never entering again. Clean exits increase your appetite to join well next time. 12. Adopt the deletion ritual. Once a week, delete 5 options. Apps, tabs, half promises, some days. Replace them with one chosen thing. Grief the deletions out loud. Choice requires mourning the lives you won't live. Mature people cry and pick. 13. Track fidelity metrics. Measure what your dopamine does not. Weeks of consistent effort, number of repaired ruptures, on-time arrivals, promised hours met. Put these on a wall chart. If your metrics are all audience and none allegiance, you've gamified the hatch. 14. Institute boring scars. Commit to chores that don't scale. Take out trash at the meeting you chaired. Wash dishes at your own party. Do the tedious part of the craft yourself weekly. Boring loyalty is how trust learns your name. 15. Practice exclusive love in small. Pick one person to prefer in concrete, scheduled ways. Wednesday calls, Friday breakfast, Sunday walk. Preference is scandalous to optionality because it says you, not infinite someones. Scandalize yourself. 16. Build a no-scroll Sabbath. One day a week without infinite alternatives in your pocket. Cook one recipe. Listen to one album end to end. Visit one friend without opening maps in your head for a better friend. Your nervous system must relearn satiation. 17. Rename FOMO as failure to own. When the ache comes, say what it is, not fear of missing out, but failure to own the choice you made. Then own it, out loud to someone who will tease you until you laugh and go back to your work. 18. Adopt the apprentice posture. Pick a craft and a human who is better than you. Submit to their standards for a season. Your hatch will call this subservience. It is humility. Humility is not self-erasure. It is speed to mastery. 19. Keep elders of fidelity on your shelf. People who stayed, a nurse in the night shift for 30 years, a teacher who buried and still taught, an artist whose 10th draft was the first draft anyone saw, a partner who forgave and grew. Read them when exits glitter. 20. Say the binding sentence. Once a day, speak a sentence with no escape hatch. I will. I won't. I won't. I'm in. I'm out. Full stop. If your mouth shakes, your life is learning a new alphabet. There's a fear under your escape habit. If you anchor, you'll drown. You don't trust yourself to choose well, and you don't trust others to be worthy of being chosen. So you keep your hand on the trapdoor lever and call it discernment. There is risk. Some commitments will hurt you. Some vows will age poorly. Some ties will ask more than you thought you could give. The point of freedom is not to avoid those costs. It is to be able to pay them on purpose for goods that would be impossible without them. Consider the paradox you've been dodging. Only bound things carry power. Electricity without a conduit is lightning and a fire. Language without grammar is noise. Rivers without banks are floods. You crave power without borders. That's why your days evaporate into impressive fog. You'll protest, what if I choose wrong? You will. Often. Commitments are not handcuffs, they are instruments. You tune them, you repair them, and sometimes you lay one down and pick up a better one with a bow that fits your hand. The question is not whether a vow can be revised. It is whether you are the kind of person who revises by repair before replacing, who leaves clean when you must leave, who prefers the pain of staying honest to the sugar of staying vague. A darker warning. Institutions love escape artists. They can move you around like furniture. You'll be praised as flexible, nimble, unattached. You will collect promotions and never a legacy. Movements will applaud your takes and never call you when the tents need to be set up in the rain. Partners will keep you around until something real is needed, and then they will pick the person who once said a sentence without air quotes and then paid the price to keep it. So write a vow you can keep, not to the cosmos, to a patch of ground, to a person, to a craft. To a corner of the broken world you will fix with boring hands. Say it to someone who has watched you run. Let them roll their eyes, then begin. There will be nights your hatch glows like an exit sign. Put your back to it, stir the soup, finish the chapter, show up at 7, kiss the same mouth, sharpen the same tool, apologize fast, repair faster. Sleep the sleep of someone who is held by their own word. If you need a sentence to hang above the lever you've been pulling, make it plain. I will use freedom to choose my bonds, not to avoid them. And if you need a prayer, keep it functional. May my yes have edges. May my no have mercy. May my feet honor what my mouth declares. May I prefer a life with furniture to a room with perfect light and nothing in it. Number 14, the meaning vending machine. You want purpose without the price. Swipe, select, dispense wisdom. You line up in front of the glowing box that promises a hot dose of why for the dollars. Threads, reels, mantras, frameworks, 12 pillars of a life that doesn't ache. When the packet drops, you peel it open, swallow, feel the sugar rush of clarity for an hour, and then the crash. So you kick the machine and say, it's broken. You don't notice the glass is a mirror. The vending machine sells a fantasy, meaning as a product, pre-portioned, shelf-stable, always in stock. No farm, no soil, no seasons, no blisters. Just add to life. You don't have to belong, you just subscribe. You don't have to keep promises, you just keep playlists. You don't need a story, you need a carousel. At first, the machine feels like mercy. You grew up with slogans that failed inspection. Then you met algorithms that could deliver refinements on demand. Every day, a fresh toolkit. Japanese words for feelings you couldn't name, stoic quips for mornings that dread, neuroscience for nights that gnaw, productivity temples for hours that leak. Your dashboard became a shrine to getting your act together. For a season, you did. Then the shrine demanded daily offerings. More inputs, more hacks, more this explains everything. And you started to realize the explanation is the only thing that ever arrives. Listen to how the trap manufactures hunger. Instant extraction. Everything you meet, book, sermon, friendship, grief, is forced through a juicer labeled takeaways. If it doesn't yield a bullet list, you call it inefficient. The pulp, a person, a place, a silence is thrown out. Optimization reflex. Moments arrive tall and animal. You color them with trackers. How can this conversation be leveraged? How will this quiet improve me? Meaning becomes the ROI of existence. Algorithmic liturgy. Your devotional cycle is the feed's cadence. Morning reels on purpose, lunch threads on courage, midnight slides on authenticity. You perform a religion with no altar but a thumb. Mantra roulette. Each week a new vow. Discipline, softness, yes, no, flow, grit. Your identity becomes a playlist of moods. Depth requires repetition. You mistake boredom for betrayal. Conference highs. Monday ghosts. You cry in dark rooms with good lighting, vow to live different, and return to the same chair. The vow was an event. The life would have to be a craft. Affirmation inflation. Like currency, reassurance loses value. Yesterday's sentence that saved you, "You are enough," buys less today. You refresh the feed for a stronger hit. Outsourced conscience. Instead of asking, what do I owe, you ask, who has a template? You obey a stranger's checklist while the neighbor's doorbell is broken and you have a screwdriver. Symptoms, if you'll hold the receipt up to the light. A bookmarks folder called tsol, groaning with items you never open. A journal of headings with no paragraphs. A calendar that says retreat often and repair the thing, almost never. A low, constant irritation with ordinary obligations because they don't feel transcendent enough to post. A private contempt for people who found meaning by staying at a craft, a marriage, a block, because their story doesn't come with a toolkit name. A reflex to narrate awe rather than kneel in it. You write this and miss this. The feeling that your life should be rearranged by Tuesday. The machine warps language. Everything becomes a framework. People speak in generic nouns: values, boundaries, alignment, space, container, holding, integration. These words were once doors. Now they're decals you stick on a wall to pretend there's a door. You describe friendship as community architecture, sorrow as somatic activation, fidelity as attachment style in practice. Your sentences gain prestige, they lose grip. Ethically, machine tempts you to confuse consumption with contribution. You call yourself a seeker while refusing the price of being found by a place and made useful in it. You sign up for causes that look beautiful in the brochure and ghost them when they get procedural. You love the idea of service. You hate the calendar of service. Meanwhile, a boring person with boring words shows up for the 6 a.m. shift again and calls it Tuesday. You scroll past them for inspiration. There is a high to vending machine meaning, the neurotic relief of clarity without consequence. For 30 minutes after a perfect thread, your life clicks. You understand your parents, your patterns, your unproductive afternoon. The curve resolves. Then reality returns with a hammer and reminds you that understanding wasn't the bill, practice was. Costs accrue like those microcharges you never cancel. 1. Dependency. You train your will to wait for a prompt. No prompt, no move. Meaning should pull you by the shirt. You sit, leash in mouth for the right quote. 2. Shallow identity. You become legible to strangers and confusing to yourself. An avatar of an ethos, all edges, no weight. You can perform any room and belong in none. 3. Patience erosion. Soil meaning that feeds, grows like oaks. You tap on the sapling and demand fruit by Friday. You replant weekly. Your yard is full of holes. 4. Cynicism. The more packets you consume, the more you notice their sameness. Dark joke follows. Nothing works. What actually happened? Nothing was given time to work. 5. Ritual anorexia. Rituals are meaning scaffolds. They are repetitive, local, and unsexy. The machine teaches you to hate them because they don't trend. You prefer fireworks to fireplaces and shiver. 6. Community as audience. You mistake views for neighbors. We becomes a demographic with analytics. When you finally need help moving a couch, the comments are generous and the street is empty. 7. Sacredness fatigue. When every caption uses holy words, nothing is holy. Your nervous system learns to treat awe like marketing and stops letting it in. 8. Moral procrastination. You know enough to be dangerous about injustice, ecology, care, but you stash action behind learning more. You are always almost ready. 9. Grief avoidance. Real meaning requires burying what will never be. The machine sells you a workaround, another module, another stance. You never weep, you swipe. Well then, the machine smirks in your pocket. What's your alternative? Burn books? Abandon tools? Go feral? No. Keep the tools. Throw away the habit of filling the hunger with symbols of food. Stop mistaking the label for the loaf. Meaning is not a dispenser. Meaning is a kiln. Heat plus time, clay plus hands, failures you can hold. The only way out is through practices that don't look dramatic enough to brag about and therefore might finally be yours. A kit that won't fit in a carousel. 1. A 30-day no new frameworks fast. You may reread, rework, rehearse, but you cannot add. You must live with the maps you already own. When your anxiety screams for a new lens, answer with a verb. Call, cook, carry, fix. Withdrawal is information about dependence. Take notes after doing. 2. The silence tithe. First 20 or 30 minutes of each day. No phone, no text, no tasks. Sit, walk, pray, breathe, stare at a leaf. Record nothing. The point is not insight, it is deference to a world that existed before your dashboard. Meaning grows in soil your devices can't measure. 3. The 2 anchor projects rule. Pick one craft and one service for 90 days. Craft, something that makes you better at making. Wood, code, camera, instrument, bread. Service, something that reduces another's burden in your zip code. No swapping, no optimizing midstream. At day 91, evaluate. Until then, transcend by repetition. 4. The pilgrimage radius. Pledge that at least half of your purpose hours happen within 5 kilometers of your bed. Join the unglamorous local, school board, clinic, compost, shelter, choir, cleanup. The machine sells you distant problems because distant effort is intoxicating and unserious. Nearby friction is what makes you a citizen. Vows, not vibes. Choose 3 sentences with verbs that bind you to time. Every Wednesday, I show up for I tell the truth even when I blush. I apologize within 24 hours when I harm. Tape them inside a cabinet you open daily. Vows are the small hinges that swing large meaning. 6. The communion calendar. A recurring table with the same people, same day, same food if you must. No curriculum, phones in a bowl. One question that costs a little to answer. Meaning is communal digestion. You cannot eat alone forever and expect to grow. 7. The takeaway embargo. When you read or watch, forbid yourself from posting or summarizing for 48 hours. Let the thing bruise or bless you before you extract a slide. If after 2 days you have something to say that requires you, then speak. Otherwise, stop trying to convert everything into currency. 8. Receipts that count. Track what your dopamine won't. Hours on your craft, meals cooked for others, things repaired, promises kept on time, touches of nature without narration, conversations finished without multitasking, apologies made with verbs. If it doesn't change a Tuesday, it isn't meaning, it's merchandise. 9. The apophatic day. Once a week, you are forbidden to label an experience as meaningful, transformational, aligned, or any cousin. Live it, clean it, end it. The discipline trains you to tolerate contact without branding. 10. Teach after trying. No advice until you have 10 hours of doing or one scar from failing. The internet pushes you to be a lighthouse while your harbor is still a sketch. Respect the tide. 11. The Tonight Rule. Before embarking on a long explanation of how to fix a life or a world, ask, what reduces harm by tonight? Do that. Then expand. Meaning that can't take the night shift is PR. 12. Grief as infrastructure. Schedule it. Name what will not be yours and bury it properly. The career you won't have, the parent who won't change, the romance that won't return, the planet that won't be what you were promised. Without funerals, you become a ghoul who feeds on hope and wonders why it tastes like dust. 13. The deletion ritual. Each week delete 5 saved items, 1 app, 1 someday. Choose one thing to keep and deepen. Grieve the rest. Maturity is the ability to own a loss without shopping. 14. Analog in the loop. For any meaning practice, insert something that can't be optimized by code. Handwriting, kneading, singing without playback, walking without pods, eye contact. Analog friction is sacred because it refuses to scale. 15. Sacred objects, profane uses. Keep one object that reminds you of your purpose, a tool, not a talisman. Use it until it bears your fingerprints and fails. Repair it, meaning lives in wear, not display. 16. The neighbor test. For every question about finding your purpose, ask a neighbor what they need this week. Deliver that before drafting a manifesto. You are not a brand, you are a body in a block. 17. Sabbath from optimizing. One full day where nothing has to be for anything. No tracking, no earning rest. The machine hates uselessness. Practice it until your nervous system stops submitting invoices to God. 18. The hinge and anvil. Hinge, a daily ritual that opens the day. Candle, prayer, list of 3 names to love. Anvil, a weekly practice that takes a hit. Long form writing, long run, long read. Hinge keeps you faithful and small. Anvil makes you durable in stress. Hack 19. Mutual aid vow. With 2 or 3 people, sign a simple pact. Emergency loans up to X, rides in the night, meals during illness. We show up for moves. No discourse, no merch, just presence. You will feel ridiculous. Then someone's life will crack and your vow will be a bridge. 20. The mirror reversal. When you want to kick the machine, remember it's glass. Ask, if meaning were a person watching me, would it see me buying or building? Then go do one ugly, useful thing that puts a fingerprint on the day. There's a fear under your habit of checking out pearls through the glass. If you stop feeding the machine, the emptiness will swallow you. Good. Let emptiness arrive. Sit with it until it tells the truth. You do not lack insights. You lack allegiance. Not to an influencer. To a handful of goods you would embarrass yourself to keep. A darker warning. The world profits from you as a loyal customer of meaning. Platforms will reward your searching and starve your staying. Movements will hire your slogans and not your Saturdays. Corporations will pay you to post, not to build. They will call your consumption learning, your restlessness, curiosity, your drift, agility. It will sound flattering while your life becomes an airport with no departures board. So, write a line you can say when the glass brightens at 1 a.m. and offers you another packet. I don't need another framework. I need another hour of fidelity. Then spend it where meaning actually grows, inside a chore, a craft, a friendship, a promise, a neighborhood. Inside a silence that isn't trying to sell you something. One day you'll open the cabinet with your vows and the paper will be soft from steam and use. You will smile, not because a reel told you to, but because a Tuesday smells like bread you made and hands you tired yourself. That's not a miracle. That's the machine, finally unplugged, humming down in the corner while a life yours learns how to make heat. 15. The archive hoarder. You built a cathedral of later. Sacks of books with the spine uncracked, PDFs named with holy care, highlight graveyards glowing neon in the margin. Your notes have notes, your tags have genealogies, your Zettelkasten could vote in 3 countries. You don't lack knowledge. You stockpile it like canned peaches in a bunker, waiting for a winter that never quite arrives. Meanwhile, you starve 2 rooms over. At first, the archive felt like devotion. You were tired of winging it. You wanted rigor. You started capturing quotes, formulas, case studies, threads, studies debunking the studies, bookmarks to must-reads, vaults of one day. Capture calmed you. Possession felt like preparation. Then a quiet reversal. The more you captured, the less you executed, because executing would expose how little of the archive had become you. Listen to the theology of hoarding. To own is to understand. If the file lives in your vault, the wisdom lives in your head. To capture is to become. If you highlighted the sentence, you embodied the virtue. To organize is to advance. If the taxonomy is clever, the craft must be improving. To be ready is to be safe. If you can cite the literature, you will never be embarrassed by a simple question. You confuse a warehouse with a workshop and call yourself a builder. The forklift is busy, nothing ships. The behaviors are elegant and deadly. You reformat the same notes across tools instead of doing the work the notes demand. Your life is a migration. You don't read books, you harvest them. Each page yields 3 highlights, 2 tags, 1 quote tweet. You leave the field bare and think you ate. You optimize for searchability, not usability. The question, can I find it, replaces can I act from it without looking? You fetishize metadata, author, year, DOI, context/collection, everything but the verb the idea requires from you by Friday. You confuse breadth with depth. 110% reads equal 1 mind changed 0%. You stockpile starter kits for crafts you never start. Brushes, lenses, plugins, modules, starter dough. Starters are your art. You avoid live questions because they will force you to spend an entry from the vault. Better to add 3 more. Language mutates. You say, I'm compiling a comprehensive resource, building a second brain, curating essential readings. Ask yourself the grotesque question, essential for what? The answer is a gesture toward a future project that keeps its distance like a mirage, close enough to justify, far enough to never demand your hands. There is a narcotic pleasure here. Libraries are quiet. Archives smell like eternity. Shelf browse your own certainty. You feel like a person who could do the thing. You do not do the thing. The gap between could and did is the square footage of shame. So you buy another book. The shame muffles for an hour. Costs accrue in silence, then pounce. 1. Integration failure. Knowledge remains exogenous, outside your nervous system, retrievable but not reflexive. Under pressure, you cannot retrieve. You collapse into the ritual of let me check my notes, which is to say I have not metabolized what I claim to own. 2. Identity colonization. You begin to introduce yourself by your library. I'm deeply into. Followed by 10 domains you skim. Your sense of self becomes a catalog entry. People ask what you build. You give them tags. 3. Creativity anemia. Originality is distortion plus digestion. You refuse to digest so you cannot distort. You reproduce quotes with excellent citation hygiene and no pulse. 4. Decision paralysis. Every choice summons the archive. What do the studies say? Which framework applies? What's the latest meta review? The pile grows taller than the deadline. You defer until reality decides without you. 5. Courage attrition. The bigger your vault, the more catastrophic it would be to ship something pedestrian. You raise your bar to match the size of your storage. Your output shrinks to match your fear. 6. Time theft by tooling. You become a connoisseur of systems. Obsidian versus Notion versus plain text versus Rome versus custom scripts versus paper. You hold symposiums with yourself about backlinks. Your craft watches you from outside like a dog at a window. 7. Moral displacement. You substitute keeping receipts for making repairs. I've collected everything on homelessness in the city replaces I showed up at the shelter twice this week. Your conscience sighs loudly. You adjust the YAML. 8. Entropy and drag. The longer an archive lives, the more it accretes detritus. You add faster than you prune. Search returns noise. You call the clutter richness. It is compost without seeds. 9. Memory laundering. Rereading highlights tricks you into believing you remember. You remember having read, not what you can recall without aid. Under stress, your mind returns blank checks to your hands. 10. Friendship with ghosts. You spend more hours with dead authors than with living collaborators. The dead are pliable. They never demand drafts. Your loneliness wears tweed. There is also an ethical rot. Knowledge as trophy case. You display the right spines on shelves, the right quotations online, as if virtue were a bibliography. You begin to look down on people who act with less footnoted precision and more courage. They change the room. You annotate the room changing. You will protest, but collecting prevents error. Preparation is responsibility. Yes, for a while, but hoarding is an overdose of prudence. Most of the errors you fear can be repaired inside the loop of doing. Many cannot be prevented on the page. The page will lie sweetly that there is a version of you that acts only when omniscient. That version is the corpse you are embalming with highlights. So how do you cut the archive down to size without burning the library you love? Not with anti-intellectualism, not with just-do-it sermons that produce sloppy harm. With conversion, from accumulation to assimilation to application, and with rules that humiliate your appetite to capture until it serves your will to build. Here is a manual that works if you are willing to be slightly embarrassed for 6 weeks. 1. Replace second brain with first hands. For every hour of input, schedule an hour of output with friction within 48 hours. Teach a 10-minute explainer. Write a 400-word synthesis from memory only. Build a tiny tool using the concept. No notes allowed on first pass. Only after failing to recall may you peak. Then annotate your failure, what didn't stick and why. This trains retrieval, not just storage. 2. Install the rule of one shelf. Constrain active sources to what fits on a literal shelf or a virtual folder with 12 items. If a new item enters, one leaves. Forced scarcity converts taste into judgment. Print the rule. Break it only with a written exception clause. Your future self is slippery. 3. Practice the one-page transfer. Every book paper gets 1 page, longhand. 3 sentences of claim, 3 of counterclaim, 3 of consequence, and 1 verb you will perform by a date. No highlights count until the page exists. The page goes in a live binder, not the cold vault. 4. Build a spine. First habit. Before you capture anything, write the 5-sentence outline of what you already think. Then read to amend the spine, not to sew a new creature from scraps. Spines turn accumulation into argument. 5. Institute a capture budget. Daily, max 5 highlights, 3 notes, 1 quote. Weekly, 1 inbox sweep. Monthly, 1 purge where you delete 20% of stored items without reading them just in case. Scarcity exposes your real interests. 6. Adopt output back pressure. Your archive cannot grow unless your output met a quota. N words shipped, N minutes taught, N prototypes tested. Tie the valve, no new inputs until you pay your output tax. Post the meter where you can be shamed by it. 7. Use jobs to be done tagging. No topic tags, only verbs. Use and pitch, refactor module, train intern, write scene, call city council. Resources are attached to jobs. When the job is done, detach or delete. This keeps your archive tethered to reality. 8. Run live fire drills. Monthly, simulate pressure. Present from memory for 10 minutes to a colleague. Debug without notes. Write a 1-pager sales brief with a timer. The rule, eyes up. Only after the drill can you consult the archive and annotate gaps. You are training reflex. 9. Build a progression ladder per domain. Define stages not by what you've read, but by what you can do, cold. Example writing, L1, 300 words, clear, no notes. L2, 800 words, argument plus counter-argument from memory. L3, 1500 words, under deadline, sources added in revision. L4, teach the craft to 5 beginners who ship. Advance only when behaviors occur twice in the wild. 10, create a graveyard and garden. Graveyard, a folder where captured items go to die unless revived by use. Garden, a tiny set of living notes you revisit weekly to rewrite in your own language. If a note hasn't been rewritten in 60 days, it is compost. 11. Practice compression publishing. Ship ugly small. Threads of 3 ideas, 1-page briefs, 2-minute demos. Public signed. The archive fears daylight because daylight prices your knowledge. Publishing exposes what you actually know and makes the next input hungry for a home. 12. Institute the tonight rule. Before adding one more source on how to fix X, do one action that changes X by tonight. If you can't, your capture is entertainment. Label it as such. Entertainment is allowed. Liars are not. 13. Write after-action reports, AARs. For each project, one page. What was supposed to happen? What happened? Why? What we'll do next time. Link back to sources that mattered. If no source mattered, prune that subtree of your archive. 14. Run retention reality checks. Pick 5 old notes weekly. Close the laptop. Recite the idea into your phone as if explaining to a teenager. Transcribe. If your explanation is mush, either learn it now or delete it. Stop worshiping what you cannot wield. 15. Schedule tool fasts. 30 days with one tool, no migrations. Put a sticky note on the screen. Switching systems is not progress. Reinvest saved time in building. 16. Convert highlights to habits. Each month, pick one highlighted idea and hardwire it into behavior with a trigger. For example, when I end a meeting, I ask, what's our next visible step? The only meaningful highlight is the one that changes a Tuesday. 17. Make a borrowed fire ledger. For every citation you wear in public, perform one act that would make the cited author proud. Teach a child their idea, pay a debt in their name, fix a small injustice. This detoxes intellectual cosplay. 18. Practice co-building. Read in pairs. Meet weekly. Each brings one idea to apply in a shared project. You are not allowed to bring what you did not use. Peer pressure, for once, saves. 19. Install seasonal purges. Quarterly, delete 30% of your archive. No backups. Keep only what your hands beg for. If this sentence horrifies you, your God has been revealed. 20. Create a ship ritual. Bell, candle, walk. Something that marks the crossing from gathering to giving. Light it, ship, then open the inbox. Ritual beats mood. Mood is why you have 9,000 notes and an empty portfolio. You'll fear waste. You invested hours capturing. Deleting feels like burning money. Remember, sunk costs are a gravity well. The universe does not refund attention. It rewards transfer, from storage to skill, from reference to reflex, from hoarded light to work that glows in someone else's room. A darker warning. The culture will applaud your archive. Employers love resource people. Movements love librarians who never demand a plan. Audiences love carousels of quotes dressed as courage. You will be respected, consulted, bookmarked, and quietly bypassed when it is time to build. The builders will call you when they need a citation, not a teammate. That ache you feel at 2 a.m. while renaming files is your life asking for a verb. So write a sentence the archive cannot digest and therefore must obey. I will know by making, and I will keep only what I use. Put it above the shelf. Then pick one project that humiliates your vault by asking for you instead. Close the tabs. Open the editor. Ship something small enough to fail, visible enough to count. Let your library be proud of you for once, not because you worshipped it, but because you left it, walked into weather, and came back with a tool warm from your hands.